Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? It's loud and clear. Yes, thank you for the folks in the back. Good morning, I'm Dr. Laverne Lewis, TriMet's Board President. Welcome to TriMet's Board of Director meeting for March 25th, 2026. We are gathered again here today at One Main Place in our TriMet boardroom for our March 2026 board meeting. We are also live streaming the meeting on YouTube. Shout out to those on YouTube. Also, we have Director Kellogg, who will be joining us, Director Flowers, and Director Frisbee, who will be joining us by remote connection. Greetings to those, and hopefully feeling better as well. All other board members are here in person. Thank you. Thank you again. We do have one more. They did show. Okay, good. Thank you again to everyone for being here this morning. Before we proceed with our board meeting, I would like to invite TriMet's Director of Safety, Craig McDonald, come on up. Director McDonald, for our safety moment, which is part of our board meeting for all of us.
Good morning, y'all. Welcome to the board meeting. Craig McDonald, I'm the Director of Safety and Environmental Services. If in case you don't know me, everybody should know me except for the few that came signed in. Anyway, if there's an emergency, what we want to do is we want to kind of get together and not panic and go out through the double doors. The double glass doors, you go to your right. There's a stairwell there on your left. You can't go any further. You can open up the stairwell door. You're going to go down the stairs calmly and not talking. 3 points of contact, so you have a hand on your handrail as you're going down the stairs. Stay to the right, just like when you're driving a car, because when the police and fire come, they're going to be coming up on your left. So you got to leave that lane open for them so they can get up the stairs. So when you get down to the bottom, you're going to come to a door, you exit, go to the right, takes you out to the street. You take a left, there's a Starbucks right there, and I will buy you Starbucks while we're waiting to come back, okay? People that need help to exit, I'll be wearing a vest. So if you have a mobility device or an ADA issue, hook onto me, and I will take you out, and we'll get you figured out and get you out of here safely. So nobody panic, right? And then the AED and the first aid kits in the back, Tommy has agreed to call 911 in case of emergency. I will render first aid CPR to you. I'm qualified to do that, so I will take care of you unless you have a directive for do not resuscitate. So anyway, but I thank you, and you guys be safe. Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you for that inspiring safety moment. Okay, let us proceed with our public forum for those who are present and have signed up to testify before the board this morning. Members of the public who wish to provide testimony but could not be here will be joining us virtually, and we have two. And they will join us after we have heard from those that are here in person. We also would like that comments be limited to, it's blank. You don't have endless time. 3 minutes? 3 minutes. We do change depending on how many we have. This morning, 3 minutes. You will note that there will be a timer to help you comply with this request. And we do ask that you respect the time that we have for you and those that follow. If you're unable to limit your comments to the 3 minutes, you can provide additional comments in writing. TriMet staff will provide you with an email address that you can send to us. And just reminder that all of the board members' nice pictures and emails are available on our website. We also like to appreciate your testimony. And if you have questions, request information, or raise an issue, it will be noted in the record. The board will not be responding. If appropriate, the general manager we'll ask TriMet staff to meet, talk, or work with you after the meeting or after you step away. Now I will call up to the testimony table. We will do the 3 seats, so we will do 3 at a time this morning. And our first 3 members of the community testifying this morning are, okay, we have Dorothy Von Eggers. Welcome, Dorothy. We have Andy Nelson, Andy Nelson. Thank you. And Eileen Cohn. Thank you, Eileen. Before you start, Dorothy, let's let Eileen get to her chair. Okay, go ahead, Dorothy.
All right, good morning, all. For the past 3 years, I've spoken with 100 or so 96 bus riders about the proposal to take bus 96 off the freeway, and here's what I found. There are 4 reasons they ride 96. 1, to encourage mass transit, their employer pays for their bus pass. 2, it's too expensive to park in downtown Portland. 3, they can get into downtown Portland faster riding bus 96 than if they were to drive in themselves from Tualatin Park and Ride and have to navigate parking. Most of those in group, most of those in group 1 through 3 state that if the new ride takes more than 30 to 35 minutes, they can't do it, and they will just end up driving themselves in. Keep in mind, this completely defeats the mission of mass transit for taking cars off the highway and creates a financial hardship. But there's a 4th group that I want to focus on, and it's those that have no alternative, either because they don't have a car, they're visually impaired, or they have other disabilities preventing them from driving into the city. And that leads me to my experience last night driving home on bus 96. I've been chatting with folks about this and spoke with the gentleman, and he mentioned to me that he had emailed the board Monday night, and he was so proud of himself, and because I've been heavily encouraging people to write in, and he shared with me his email, and he gave me permission to read his email, and so I'm going to go ahead and read it now. Dear members of the board, I am writing to express my strong support for maintaining the current schedule and route of the 96 Express. I have relied on this line for years to commute from my home in Tualatin to my workplace near PDX. My current schedule involves working 4 10-hour shifts from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. To arrive by 6:45 a.m., I take the 5 a.m. 96 north to downtown to connect with the Red Line Max. In the evenings, I rely on the 6:12 or the 6:40 southbound bus p.m., arriving home at 7:30 p.m. Due to my leg disability, I am unable to drive. The efficiency of the 96 Express is the only reason I am able to maintain my current employment. Any changes to this established route would make my commute time prohibited and jeopardize my ability to keep my job. Please keep the 96 Express route and schedule it as it currently stands. Thank you. And this is from Brian Schultz, and he gave me permission to say his name. In closing, this is the only commuter express for the Southwest I-5 corridor, and please, if you take it away, it'll be displacing a lot of people. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, Dorothy. Andy?
Good morning, Dr. Lewis and members of the board. Let me do that again. Good morning, Dr. Lewis and members of the board. My name is Andy Nelson. I'm CEO of Ride Connection. I'm here this morning to offer Ride Connection's renewed partnership as TriMet works to serve our community's needs amid a difficult funding environment. Ride Connection and TriMet share a powerful history, and it all started during another economic slowdown, this time in the late 1980s. At the time, TriMet saw a need to work upstream to provide service to customers in need of specialized transportation, notably older adults and people with disabilities. TriMet worked with community organizations at that time to start the organization that today is known as Ride Connection. And in the nearly 40 years since, the vision for Ride Connection has come true. Today, Ride Connection supports TriMet in two foundational and fundamental ways. First, we indeed do work upstream to provide personalized, safe transportation for people who otherwise might have to use Lyft. As you know well, Lyft is TriMet's premier but also most expensive service, and demand outweighs capacity. Now, Ride Connection serves more than 6,000 customers a year, reducing pressure on the Lyft system and providing a cost-effective way to meet community needs. Second, Ride Connection works one-on-one with customers to help them navigate TriMet fixed routes. We call this navigation, and by showing people how to use the bus, we help them understand how TriMet can meet their mobility needs. In both cases, Ride Connection supports TriMet and its goals, just as we have done for the past 40 years. As you face difficult budget cuts this season, please consider Ride Connection your partner and ally. Specifically, we stand ready to help decrease the financial pressure on Lyft. Ride Connection's door-to-door service is a great solution for thousands of people who are Lyft eligible. And Ride Connection service is just half of what it costs to provide a Lyft ride. As you know, TriMet cannot say no to a Lyft request, but it can say yes to working upstream with Ride Connection so we both meet community needs and relax some of the demands on TriMet. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Eileen?
Good morning. My name is Eileen Cohn, and I'm a resident of Pearl District, and my only mode of transportation is through the public transportation system. I discovered that among the latest proposed changes to TriMet is a new route for bus 45. This new route no longer passes through downtown area of Portland, and this was my only bus connection from the downtown Portland to Washington Square Mall. I did some research on the internet and even called TriMet's customer service, but could not find any other transportation to the mall. My eye doctor and lens crafter are out there. Also, with the loss of most stores downtown, transportation to the mall is needed to have access to stores like Macy's and JCPenney. In 2023, another bus that went down from the downtown area, bus 56, was rerouted to OHSU. I need to know what will now provide me with access that I need to get to Washington Square Mall. I have no other way to get to the mall, and I need to get to my eye doctor and lens crafter, and these are sources that I have coverage for. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony today. Next, I would like to invite up for testimony Jeff Farisi. Okay, come on up, Jeff. Ellen Harrington. Did I say that correctly? Harrison. Thank you. And Jenna Peterson. Good morning, and thank you for being here. Jeff, you may start. Turn on. Very good. Thank you.
All right, good morning, Madam President and members of the board. My name is Jeff Federici. I'm a federal employee who has utilized and appreciated TriMet's public transportation for nearly 14 years. I'm here to strongly encourage you to consider and approve a hybrid model for the Express Line 96, one that preserves peak hour express service on I-5 while also introducing your proposed midday neighborhood coverage. This is not a choice between coverage and efficiency. The hybrid option delivers both early morning and late afternoon evening express to the commuters while also servicing the proposed neighborhood route the majority of the day. Today, Line 96, as the essential fast and high-performing regional commuter, one of the lowest cost per ridership in TriMet's portfolio, serves over 2,300 riders weekly with long trip lengths that clearly indicate its role in connecting numerous outer Southwest communities to the Portland downtown economic center. These are exactly the kind of trips where transit should be fast and competitive to succeed. If we remove or slow this express service, we risk losing these riders entirely. I, along with many other riders I speak, as you just heard Dorothy, speak to many of within our bus route, and many of us will start driving or choose to work from home or within the Southwest communities. The data is clear. Eliminating the express function would put approximately 275 additional cars on I-5 every weekday, generating up to 1.5 million additional miles annually. That means more congestion, higher infrastructure costs, and increased emissions, not to mention accidents. This is the opposite direction of TriMet and Oregon government's climate and mobility goals. Just as important, this is about rider behavior. Commuters such as myself use this express line as it is fast, it is reliable, it is predictable, and it is affordable. If we take that away, most of us will end up driving. It's not a choice. And once us riders are lost, it'll be very difficult to win us back. Riders will also seek jobs outside of downtown Portland, which will greatly impact Portland's goal and need to promote increased economic growth. This is the opposite effect TriMet, Portland State University, City of Portland, Multnomah County, Governor's Office, as well as all the other agencies and businesses want. The hybrid model that I've sent you guys solves these problems for these governments and all of us commuters. By maintaining the express service during peak hours, we preserve speed and reliability when it matters most. By introducing the proposed local service midday, you'll still expand access to destinations like the PCC, Sylvania, and Barber, growing ridership, yet without sacrificing the core function of the Express Bus 96. The approach directly aligns with your service guidelines. It protects productive, high-demand corridor and ridership. Real quick closing. In short, the hybrid model is not a compromise. It is a smarter, more strategic plan. Hope you consider it, read it, and have the opportunity to approve it. Thank you for your time this morning.
Okay. Thank you. Ellen?
Hello, my name is Ellen Hamilton. I'm a resident in Concordia. We all want to see a financially viable TriMet, but more, we want a viable world-class transit system. I'm deeply concerned that TriMet's current budget proposal, with its focus on service cutbacks, takes us in the opposite direction. My own life will be impacted negatively, but more importantly, the short-sighted approach of service cuts will create a downward spiral that will result in even lower ridership, slower travel time for all commuters, and less money going into our economy. I moved to Portland in 2022 in large part because I thought I could live here car-free, relying on bicycling and public transit. I've mostly been able to manage the basics, but with current and proposed service cuts, I participate less and less in my community. As a substitute teacher with PPS's budget cuts, I've had to go further afield to find work. By next school year, with further TriMet cuts, more jobs will be out of reach for me, reducing what I put into the payroll taxes that TriMet draws on. My current home, built through the residential infill program, was supposed to be located close to transit, but now with the number 17 route through Concordia proposed for elimination, I'd have to walk 9 to 12 blocks. In bad weather, with heavy loads, or when age limits my mobility, I just won't go. So what happens? For people like me, either we move away to a more welcoming region or we limit our outings. risking social isolation, poorer health outcomes, lower earnings, and contributing a lot less to the local economy. Others will resort to driving more, increasing carbon emissions and the congestion that leads to road rage and slower travel for all. Still others will risk unemployment and a slide into housing instability. These negative outcomes will not only decrease TriMet's revenue from fares and payroll services, but will exacerbate the very conditions your report calls out: high levels of unemployment, remote work, and office vacancy. And the trends will only increase. As low service levels turn riders against public transit, it will be hard to get them back on the buses when funding returns. The cuts you proposed were based on a revenue forecast that has improved from the 5% level, and we still await the results of a transportation ballot measure. I haven't seen clear efforts on TriMet's part to increase ridership, nor have I seen any analyses of whether riders would take small fare increases over draconian service cuts. I urge you to focus on investigating current, more creative approaches to finding funding and learning from other, more forward-thinking regions about how to have excellent transit. High-quality public transit will make Portland into a world-class city that not only attracts tourists and keeps its residents healthy, but it becomes a place that people want to move to instead of moving away, as I'm considering. Excellent transit can reduce carbon pollution up to 70%. Okay, that's my time. Thank
No,
you.
go ahead and continue.
Okay.
Sure.
At a time when our government is spending more and more to mitigate the costs of heat waves and wildfire smoke, you need to taking TriMet the most appealing option for most places that many people want to go to, so that we see faster travel times for all, fewer traffic fatalities, safer bicycling options, higher employment, and more residents putting money into our local businesses. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ellen. Okay. Jenna?
Good morning, Dr. Lewis and the rest of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I love TriMet. I buy your Christmas sweaters, your wrapping paper. I encourage my friends to take the Max when we need to get around during the day. I even talk about the benefits of your safety response team at my staff meetings to help spread awareness and encourage more folks to feel comfortable taking transit. You will not find a more enthusiastic or ardent advocate for your program. What I'm not loving are the proposed changes to Bus Line 38. I've enjoyed the privilege of being a regular rider of TriMet for the 20 years I've lived in the Portland area. For the last 11 years, I've used the Line 38 on my daily commute. I firmly believe that a safe, reliable, and efficient transportation system is essential and is an essential and foundational part of any city. I've seen Line 38 go through cuts before, and service has already been reduced to peak hours only, meaning it runs 7 times a day, only during the weekdays. While this service may appear minimal and an easy cut, its role is significant in the lives of the riders who use it to commute to work and school every day. Line 38 serves a close-in, yet geographically isolated population of riders connecting downtown Portland to southwest Portland, Lake Oswego, and Tualatin. The proposed changes will eliminate a direct connection between downtown Portland and 5 miles of the existing route along Boone's Ferry to Terwilliger Boulevard. This will require riders to walk a mile plus along dark, windy roads with no sidewalks to connect to transit services. The proposed changes also redirect ridership west to Barber Transit Center and Washington Square instead of downtown. For those wanting to connect to downtown, they will be required to transfer between 2 limited service lines, likely resulting in extended wait times. Currently, my commute from the border of Lake Oswego and Portland takes 45 minutes to an hour. I ride the 38 downtown, transfer to the Max, and ride to the Lloyd District where I work. This takes approximately double the amount of time it would take me to drive a car if that were an option for me, but I'm willing to do it because I believe in this system. Under the new proposal, I will have 2 transfers, likely extending my commute to well over an hour. And I'm one of the lucky ones on my line. My stop is the last one that's still preserved and part of the proposal. We know that inconvenience translates into fewer riders. I am concerned that the proposed cuts will not only directly impact my daily commute, but will disincentivize ridership across the system. I fear that once cuts are made, service will never be restored to these geographically isolated areas. We should be looking ahead to the future in ways we can expand services and increase ridership, not cut it. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jenna. Thank you to everyone who's come forward today for their testimony. The board greatly appreciates your words, your thoughts, and your comments on the lines. Thank you. Let us now go to those who have signed up to provide a virtual testimony. Okay, we have Demetrius and Jennifer. Demetrius, is he available? Good
Yes.
morning. And we can hear you. You can proceed. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some feedback on the proposed TriMet service cuts. I'm Dr. Dimitrios Gegios. I'm an analyst for the USDA Forest Service, specializing in urban forest inventory remote sensing. If some of you, the name sounds familiar, it's because I'm the author of the study about 10 years ago that detected the bullseye and precision cast induced pollution of arsenic in the city through some moss analysis. On the subject, the proposed plans to reroute and eliminate bus lines, as a previous speaker mentioned, lives about 1.5 miles along the Southwest Boones Ferry Road, which is a major collector, arterial without service. I'm directly affected. I've been using this bus every day, the 614 bus, come to work downtown since 2012. Anyone along this section, under the proposed changes, would have to walk a considerable distance. I have uploaded a map in the chat for your reference. They will have to walk considerable distance, and while walking, not necessarily bad, if you can. The problem is that major parts of that, they don't have a shoulder, they don't have a sidewalk, and they are very poorly lit. In my subdivision, there are a number of kids that would like to use the bus going to Riverdale High School. With the proposed changes, that would be impossible. I'm wondering if that was your kid, would you allow it to walk on the pavement of a road where the speed limit is 35, but most of the drivers are doing 50, to walk every day, both directions, to go to school? That is a safety issue, and if they're forced to do something like that, there is going to be an accident in waiting. Another thing that I'm trying to remove portions of what I had and mentioned by other presenters, I have to draw your attention to the correspondence between routes and buses, if somebody has to do that. Pay attention if you're planning to rely on people switching buses, especially when you go from a frequent bus to not so frequent bus or rush hour only. Make sure that you have measures in place to ensure that there is not going to be incompatibilities where the rider is losing time to the less frequent bus and has to wait an hour or more for the next one. Thanks very much for the opportunity to provide some feedback. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Demetrius. Okay. Our next testimony is from Jennifer. Is she online? Good morning, Jennifer.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Lewis and members of the TriMet board for giving us this opportunity to provide feedback. My name is Jennifer Everett. I'm a resident of Wilsonville. I am a frequent rider of the 96, and I catch it at the Tualatin Park and Ride like a lot of my fellow riders. Without repeating what some of the other proponents of the 96 have said, I just want to highlight again who's riding this bus. It's a lot of federal employees from a wide cross-section of agencies who serve Oregonians. The bus also has students at PSU, and I've got to guess because it serves the county courthouse, City Hall, and the state offices. There's a lot of other municipal and government workers on that bus. The impact of the change, I know the 96 isn't being cut, but the change making it a local means a lot of us are going to face either a much more significant commute, which we'll look for alternatives, or we'll have to pay parking downtown, which right now is a minimum of $14 a day, depending on which garage you're in, or we'll have to drive. And as someone, as we've talked about, the stretch of I-5 on the Terwilliger curves is clogged, horrible, accident-prone. I've personally been rear-ended on that stretch, and if that's ever happened to you or you've been stuck in traffic, it's awful. So the impact of putting that many more cars potentially on that stretch of 95 could be very problematic for the metro region as a whole. I'd like to encourage the board to explore some alternatives. Some have already been discussed. One is taking the 96 back to its previous iteration where it was a rush hour only bus, serving a big chunk of time in the morning and a big chunk of time in the afternoon. The other is perhaps charging an express fare. Many cities have express buses, Boston, New York, LA, Seattle, upcharging this bus, maybe at rush hour. I certainly would prefer to pay an upcharge fare to the exorbitant price of paying for parking 5 days a week in downtown Portland. And finally, perhaps TriMet could explore a partnership such as the one that SMART and Chariots have. There is a SMART Chariots partnership that travels from Wilsonville down to Salem. Again, it's more expensive, but it provides an I-5 direct route down I-5. We have no light rail. Voters voted down the chance of having light rail to the South Metro region. We're really poorly serviced by public transit, and I would just encourage you to help us out in the South Metro region. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you again to Demetrius and Jennifer for virtual testimony this morning. Now, before public testimony closes, is there anyone else in person, virtual? Okay, I'm seeing none. Okay, at this time, we will close public forum. Thank you for those, again, who came, took time out of your day to be here and provide testimony to the board. We will now proceed to the board report section of our business meeting. I will begin with Director Graham to present a report from the recent meeting with the Committee on Accessible Transportation, also known as CAT. Director Graham?
Thank you. Good morning. And I want to share that I was unfortunately unable to attend the last CAT meeting because it was scheduled at the same time as the board public forum related to service cuts. So I want to thank Eileen and the staff for providing excellent notes to update the work of the committee. The March CAT meeting took place on Transit Driver Appreciation Day, and the committee discussed their appreciation for frontline employees, and also the ATP shared their innovative approach to receiving rider commendations by adding a QR code on board buses so riders can leave their praise digitally. The Fixed Route Subcommittee had a number of updates, including talking about communications during major service disruptions and centering on the importance of clear and inclusive rider communications during these disruptions. There have been reports of riders using mobility devices who have been experiencing challenges during recent tunnel work, underscoring this need. And the CAT is optimistic that insights from this debrief can help to make improvements as we move forward. The CAT's charter also includes reviewing vehicle specifications in advance of procurement, specifically for FX on 82nd. And the committee is interested in being more deeply involved in this process. So there's a growing presence of mobility devices along with strollers, carts, and bikes, and this underscores the importance of developing a more holistic and future-focused strategy for onboard space and interior design on new buses. The pilot providing fully subsidized fare for Lyft-eligible riders using fixed route service is open and available for additional Lyft riders. And it looks like we're looking at options for promoting that as well. And then the committee spent more time talking about ADA pass-ups. This continues to be an area that needs focus. This occurs when all of the areas for securement are filled, and basically there's an upward trend that is both significant and ongoing, signaling that we need to prioritize these issues. Eileen offered that the TriMet Transportation Leadership Team is working on a suite of remedies from policy, training, bus design, community engagement, and signage, but this is an area that needs continued focus from the agency. The Wayfinding Subcommittee provided an update describing the need to ensure that third-party applications connecting to TriMet's online services need to make sure that they adhere to the web content accessibility guidelines and be compliant by April 2027. And next month, the ATP team will initiate a tactile map pilot to evaluate usability for riders who are blind or have low vision and to improve their wayfinding. Once this pilot is completed, those maps will be available at the Mobility Center and also can be sent to riders or downloaded from the website. The 82nd Avenue Advisory Committee provided a number of updates and specific recommendations at the 60% design milestone, including larger, more visible wheelchair boarding signage, installation of blue octagonal poles. Consideration should be given to forward-facing mobility device securement systems and additional space in the back of the bus needed to accommodate all of the other things that people are bringing onto buses that I mentioned before. The TV Highway Community Advisory Committee also provided an update. This project is still pretty early in its design, but the committee discussed how at this time 60-foot buses are not feasible for the TV Highway project and will instead be incorporating modified 40-foot buses and the kinds of features that will be needed on those buses for accessibility. The nominating subcommittee presented their FY27 CAT member appointment recommendations, and there was an outstanding group of 31 applicants with lived experience as older adults, people with disabilities, ties to communities, and notable partner organizations. 5 current members were proposed for reappointment, and 5 new members were selected to fill 3 remaining openings and 2 alternate positions, and this slate will go to the general manager for review. And then the TriMet staff provided a number of updates. I'll mention a few. There's TriMet Next service, a 1-year pilot allowing commingling paratransit and general public trips for the same day service will conclude on March 31st. They provided an update on construction on 7 additional access-controlled elevators, and the CAT supported the design approach, noting its consistency with other approaches to allow better access and platforms. And then finally, the CAT has recommended for a long time that TriMet leadership consider adopting a formal accessibility policy to ensure accessibility is embedded across all functions of the agency, rather than relying on the individual efforts of advocates. So the CAT is discussing a framework for developing an accessibility policy, and it would establish clear expectations that every division shares responsibility for advancing accessibility, compliance, and continuous improvement. And the thought is that by integrating accessibility considerations into planning, operations, capital projects, customer experience, and workforce practices, that we can create a more consistent and accountable framework for decision-making and budgetary policies. So the committee will continue to develop the draft under the CAT and then eventually engage TriMet leadership, and that should be coming to the board at some point. Thank you.
Thank you, Erin. Are there any questions or comments for Erin on the Committee on Accessible Transportation? Comments from Director Kellogg, Director Frisbee, or Director Flowers at all? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. We'll now ask Director Flowers to present a report from the recent meeting for Metro Policy Advisory Impact Committee. Director Flowers?
Yeah, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sorry to be missing here in person today. I'm a little under the weather. I think the baby got everybody a bit sick on this end. Thank you so much to staff for helping summarize the last meeting. I'm just gonna read off the main takeaways from our last impact meeting. Metro and regional partners have made significant progress on the 82nd Avenue Transit Project, Tualatin Valley Highway Transit and Safety Project, and Montgomery Park Streetcar Extension, and are ready to take next steps in project development. To be eligible for state and federal funding opportunities that support project development efforts, the endorsed transit projects must have their LPAs adopted in the regional transportation plan. Staff gave an overview of requested RTP amendments, and next month, Impact will be asked to consider these recommendations from Metro Council. I should note here that this month's Impact meeting, which was scheduled for tonight, was canceled. So the next time we convene will be on April 22nd. Back to this last meeting, though, Metro staff gave their monthly update on that future vision effort I've been talking to y'all about. And the next phase of public engagement will include an online survey, roadshows, hosted conversations, and other public events to raise awareness of the project and to continue to get participation. I'd love to encourage everybody in our orbit to push young folks in their arenas to participate in this project. And not just young folks, but intergenerational representation from across all our different constituencies and communities. I think it's really important that as we're thinking about, the next 50 years of life in our city, our state, our region, that those voices are included in the process and centered in a really direct way. The committee heard an update from the West Side Economic Alliance and a work group regarding analysis of industrial land readiness as part of the urban growth report process. And the outcome of this work will be a specific set of recommendations provided to Impact, which will better align market realities and could inform Metro's process for evaluating buildable land. And last thing here, staff shared initial feedback from an economic development work group on how Metro can leverage its regional planning policies, land use responsibilities, and convening role to support long-term job growth. The work group had 4 primary recommendations for Metro Council, and I'm happy to report back on those the next time we get together. I just wanted to close by saying one other thing. I really appreciated all the public testimony today, and wanted to voice something that I've heard from a number of people in my district, District 5, which is concern over the elimination of the current configuration of the Line 17. I know we'll be effectively renaming the 70, the 17, and trying to consolidate the bus routes. But for many folks in our area of the city, walking 6 blocks up to 33rd is just not an option. So just want to make sure that we have that on public record here, and that I'm able to express with real assertion here that that line matters tremendously to many folks in my district. So thank you for the time. And if you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, JT. Any questions for JT on his report? Okay. Hearing none. Okay, thank you. At this time, the F&A committee report. The meeting itself will be held after our board meeting this week, so we will not have that report until next time. Okay. So at this time, we will now turn to our general manager for his monthly report. General Manager Dessou.
Good morning, President Lewis, members of the board, our community partners that are here with us today, TriMet staff, thank you for being here, and the public. In my report this morning, we will check in on ridership for February. You'll hear the monthly operations analysis report. We have exciting news about a new digital connection between TriMet and other local bus service providers. I'll share about a special upcoming win-win for TriMet and the Portland Trail Blazers. And then finally, we're going to honor an employee whose actions were truly life-saving. So let me start with ridership. TriMet provided nearly 5 million rides in February. So year-to-date, our ridership for the month was up just over 4%. You'll remember, however, that February 2025 was affected by a short blast of winter weather. Our bus ridership continues to lead the way, up 5.8% in February over last February. Our max ridership was up less than 1% overall, with a 2.5% increase on the weekends. And I was in town this past weekend, and it was pretty loaded. With ridership growing overall plateauing, it demonstrates the continuing stable demand for our transit service. Now I would like to turn to our monthly operations analysis report. Let me bring up Les Spittler, our Director of Transit Systems Support Services, and Senior Analyst for Operations and Planning, Catherine Keeling. So I'll let them get set up, and then I'll just go directly over to you, Les.
Thank you, General Manager Dessou. Good morning, President Lewis and members of the board. Catherine and I are here to present the monthly operations analysis for February 2026. Next slide, please.
For ridership, both reporting month February 2026 and baseline month February 2025 had the same number of weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. However, as Sam mentioned, something to bear in mind is that last year there was a brief but significant winter weather storm with snow, school shutdowns, and transportation impacts. While it's great to have year-over-year growth across all four modes, we do acknowledge this difference in weather circumstances, especially as it pertains to contextualizing the growth rate of over 22% for our accessible transportation programs. Our lift-eligible customers presumably would have exercised caution in last year's winter weather and likely postponed or reduced travel when possible. Next slide. I think this slide shows how last February had an apparent weather-impacted ridership dip, especially for bus and for ATP. So even though the year-over-year change discussed on the last slide for ATP is high, this ATP line graph shows that its monthly ridership totals for our paratransit service are actually less than previous month. Next slide.
Okay, moving on to bus. I'd like to highlight boarding rides per revenue hour. This is a key performance indicator used by transit agencies to measure productivity and to gauge the amount of demand served given the amount of service provided. It's great to see an increase from January as well as an increase from last February. I also want to highlight mean distance between failure. I noted the increase last month for January and want to highlight it again because it increased 32% from January and 72% from last February. As I mentioned last month, the bus maintenance team is continuing midlife overhauls, which is clearly having a positive impact on vehicle reliability. Great job, bus maintenance. Okay, moving on to MAX. I want to highlight on-time performance. Not only is it above target for the third month in a row, but it's approximately 13% higher than last February. This is really exciting and shows the intentionality of our rail operations team to focus on this metric across all of their staff. There's no doubt it also represents a good working relationship between the rail operations team and rail equipment maintenance. And that's a great segue to mean distance between failure for MAX. It exceeded the target for the second month in a row and was 44% higher than January and 145% higher than February of last year. That's really impressive. Rail equipment maintenance is closer to their budgeted headcount than they have been in years, and they've been really focusing on their preventative maintenance activities, and they've been 100% year to date. Next slide.
For accessible transportation programs, performance continues to exhibit increases in service efficiency as boarding rides per revenue hour hit a new high. As discussed last month, this metric is a priority for LIFT program leaders because the growing paratransit demand compels leaders to forge efficiency-oriented strategies for the future. Next slide. On WES, I have a response for last month's question about WES's peers and their respective boarding rides per revenue hour. Regarding peership, the National Transit Database has a modal category for passenger rail that runs primarily on the national freight system, let me say it again. For passenger rail that runs primarily on the national freight rail system at different times than freight use. In the United States, 6 transit agencies, including TriMet, operate service in this category. That's our peer group. The respective metropolitan areas of this peer group, Dallas, San Francisco, San Diego, Austin, and the New Jersey part of the greater NYC Metroplex, these metropolitan travel markets are all more populous than Portland, though Austin is nearly the same, just a little bit bigger. And all these peer rail agencies do have more boardings than WES. Moreover, the built environment of all these peer agencies are different. Setting that aside, if you sorted these 6 peers from highest rides per revenue hour to the least, TriMet's WES ranks 5th. Nearly a tie with Cap Metro's line connecting Austin, Texas to its suburbs, but according to the 2024 National Transit Database reporting year, they edged us out for 4th place. Now, San Francisco's BART extension to Antioch, this is not their light rail system exactly, but this extension has the highest boarding rides per revenue hour at 99. And Denton County's A train has the lowest at 14. Unfortunately, the 2025 NTD reports have not yet been released. Those are 2024 numbers. One last thing to note is that boarding rides per revenue hour does not account for the number of cars on the trains. So for boarding rides per car revenue hour, hang with me, TriMet is actually tied for 3rd alongside San Francisco's BART extension. They employ a lot more cars on service days. And WES does have some operational efficiency in their single car deployments. So to recap, TriMet is on the lower end of our peer group for boarding rides per revenue hour, but performs in this group very similarly to our most similarly sized metropolitan area, that is Austin. And the supplementary note on boarding rides per car revenue hours shows that WES's single car deployments do offer some operational efficiencies. And on that measure, WES actually fares appreciably better or higher than our peers in Austin. So we hope this is a helpful and satisfying response to the inquiry from last month. Next slide. And lastly, we have the 12-month look back with metrics and definitions. Thank you for your time this morning. This concludes our overview.
Thank you both for your presentation. I would say stand by at the end of my presentation. I'm sure there'll be questions unless you want to do them now.
Any questions for our presenters this morning? Hearing none? Nothing from, yes? Okay, Director Frisbee, good morning, and good morning to the little one.
You, Emily, say hi to your fan club. Thank you so much for that presentation and for responding to that question from last time. I really appreciate it. I mostly just wanted to give you a chance to editorialize if in doing that research, anything jumped out at you that differs, that either you saw other places doing that was producing results and data that you thought was really noteworthy, or if anything jumped out at you that differentiates WES from those places that we're doing that is effective or that is challenging. So I just wanted to give you a little space to provide some editorial comments.
Certainly. The major takeaways for me was that, as seems apparent in retrospect, like just the size of the overall metropolis area that this rail type is connected to really does exhibit some sort of travel metabolism that just those respective routes have more efficiencies. So I tried to slice and dice for these peer groups without slicing them to death. I do think that we saw some success stories between these sorts of rail groups that would serve like a university, or if the suburbs that they connected between were sizable in themselves. Like there is a Pier Rail that goes from Escondido, California to another similar city, Oceanside, sorry, Oceanside. So, yeah, it's not that there aren't any rail lines that go suburb to suburb, but it just seems like the overall efficiency or success story for a lot of these was the size of the larger metropolitan area, or also the supporting built environment. So Dallas, or the Denton County Rail, which supports Dallas County to Denton County, that's a very big metropolis, but without becoming an expert and saying anything too official on that system, I think that there is less of a transit-friendly built environment in Texas, which from my personal experiences is fairly car-friendly. So those were my major takeaways.
Thank you. That's really helpful, and I appreciate you being willing to offer up sort of additional thoughts from your research. So thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. Okay.
All right, thank you both. Appreciate the presentation. Before I continue, Board, I just want to mention that our Chief Safety and Security Officer, Andrew Wilson, is out. So we are going to forego the monthly safety and security update this month. So thank you on that. Turning to a years-long project that has led to new digital connection between TriMet and fellow transit agencies, C-Tran, SMART, and Sandy Area Metro. It is also linking us to community shuttles. Using our online trip planner, riders can easily plan trips across service providers. So I have with us today our Chief Public Affairs Officer, J.C. Vanetta. I have our Chief Information Officer, Dr. Ethan Benetton, our Digital Communications Manager, Dave Whipple, and our Manager of Enterprise Systems Application, Luis Ochoa, to share more information about this project and how it will make our riding TriMet and transit throughout our community easier. So over to you, JC.
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, President Lewis, members of the board. I'll keep this brief because I want to focus on what matters most, and that's making transit easier to use. This update to our trip planner reflects our strong commitment to better coordinate our services with other transit providers. Our riders don't think in terms of boundaries, they just want to get where they want to go. By integrating other transit providers, we're working to present a seamless, unified system that better matches how they actually travel. Together, we can deliver a better, more connected experience than any one of us could on our own. Just importantly, we are listening to our customers, responding to feedback, reducing friction, and continuing to make incremental improvements that keep transit relevant, accessible, and especially for those who need it most. And with that is a huge technical achievement. Ethan?
Thanks. I'm going to steal your microphone since we got four of us up here. Dr. Lewis, members of the board, General Manager DeSue, I'm so pleased to be here. You don't hear very often from those of us in IT, and there's a reason for that. And it's not just because some members of the IT team prefer to do their work behind the scenes, although there is some truth to that. But it's also true that the work that the IT division does is wildly complicated and very abstract, and it can be really difficult to talk about to a lay audience. That doesn't mean that it's not important, though. Virtually nothing at TriMet works without the technology behind it, and most people don't notice it when it's working right. And thanks to people like Luis and his peers here, it almost always works right. So today, you have this rare opportunity to notice IT when something good is happening. So the work that Luis will tell you about is the result of years of effort by this team of really highly trained, hardworking, passionate professionals. And Luis will give you a short overview. He will answer all the questions you have, but there's no need for you to master the content of the technology behind it. My hope is that you can take a moment to appreciate the team that works quietly and invisibly behind the scenes every day to serve our riders in our region. I could not be more proud of them.
Would you like to do a demo first? Okay, go for it. Go. Yep.
Good morning, directors. Dave Whipple, Digital Communications Manager. To rewind just a little bit for some context, as JC mentioned, we've been making a number of upgrades to TriMet.org to help expand access to transit and improve the rider experience. Next slide, please. The last time we were here with you sharing TriMet.org news, we were announcing our new language selector, which translates the website into our top 5 LEP languages. We had also recently kicked off an accessibility initiative to improve the experience for people with vision impairments in particular and using screen readers. And last fall, we overhauled our mapping engine on TriMet.org for a faster, more responsive experience. And last Monday, next slide, please, that marked the soft launch of our regional trip planner project. And that means you can now plan a trip on C-Tran as well as many other local transit providers using the trip planner on TriMet.org. In addition to C-Tran, we've added Washington Park Shuttle, Clackamas County Shuttles, Multnomah County Shuttles, Ride Connection Shuttles, Wilsonville Smart, and Sandy Area Metro. Next slide, please. In total, we've added about 24 local transit services to TriMet.org now through this project. And many of these are neighborhood shuttles, some serving specific employment areas. Many of these routes connect with bus and TriMet bus and rail service. I should mention, we are incredibly grateful to all of these partners who helped make this project possible. Next slide, please. Now let's look at how this will work for riders. Here's a sample trip that we've planned between a location in Portland and a location in Vancouver. The trip planner is showing here the C-Tran lines that you would take to get there, both on the map and in the itinerary. When you're setting your origin and destination in the trip planner, you can search for addresses and businesses within the C-Tran service area, just like you can within the TriMet service area. And we've also added more detail about fares in the trip directions that the trip planner gives you to help you navigate trips with transfers between these agencies. Next slide, please. For every vehicle that you board, the itinerary now shows you how to pay, including where and how to tap the hop reader, and how much it will cost based on what type of vehicle it is and your transfer time remaining. In this case, it's a free transfer. We had just paid on the 105, and it tells you that in the itinerary. We know riders really benefit from this level of detail because it can really help take the guesswork out of transit, especially if it's an uncertain trip, and then learn about the nuances of our fare system. Next slide, please. In addition to planning trips on all of the providers I just mentioned, you can also view route maps and stop locations for those services on the map. And where available, we'll also show you real-time arrival countdowns for those vehicles. Next slide, please. Now I'll pass it to Luis for more background on the Regional Trip Planner project and how it came about.
Thank you, Dave. This is really a groundbreaking upgrade for our riders, but also for our regional transportation system as a whole. Next slide, please. As many of you know, our regional trip planner has been on our wish list for quite some time. It's something that many of our customers have requested and are eagerly awaiting for. Now that our website is connected to our regional transit system, riders will be introduced to many options available to them for the trip options at the same time. The project was spearheaded by Viviana McHugh, our IT manager of mobility and location-based services. The idea was first conceived around 2011, and as technology evolved, partnerships were developed. As data exchange standards were created and STIF funded was secured, the project finally kicked off at the end of 2023. Viviana convened the regional project collaboration, and the project team provided technical support to our agency and partners throughout its process. It is important to note that the integrated trip planning across multiple agencies is only possible for the open data exchange standard that TriMet pioneered in collaboration with Google around 2006. This standard is called GTFS, and it stands for Generic Transit Feeds Specification. GTFS provides a consistent and scalable way for both existing and future planners to integrate with our trip planner. TriMet continues to be a leading contributor to this open standard as of today. By pairing this open data exchange standard with our open source trip planning engine, we've built a scalable solution that empowers agencies worldwide to launch their own regional trip planning services, leveraging our tools. In order to deliver these new features, the project team had to overcome major technological hurdles. These include, are not limited to, a complete upgrade of our Open Trip Planner to its latest version for efficiency and optimization. An upgrade to our geocoder services, which is a fancy term for just saying our service that takes an address and creates a map coordinates to be represented in our map system, also got upgraded for efficiency services. As well as our map tile system, we also got upgraded to a new lighter weight and more performant graphical interface, so that we are able to overcome the addition of computational overhead of representing the expanded service area within our planner. Imagine delivering all this while coordinating across more than 16 organizations and over 100 project team members. Quite the accomplishment, and is a very unique project for us here in TriMet. Now, last Monday's release was a soft launch. So what this means that even though it is live and people can use it, we have not gone and broadly advertised this. We're looking for organic use and elicit feedback. So that, next slide. In May, we will push a final release that has been refined with this feedback, as well as we will now advertise it more broadly to our riders. This release will also include several accessibility enhancements, such as a dark mode on the web and many others. So please stay tuned. I want to thank you all for your time, and if you have any questions, we're here to answer them.
First, let me just say thank you. I know that there was a lot of work, hard work and effort put into this. Great presentation. I would say to you is to keep innovating as you're doing and leading the way as we move forward. We are very proud of you moving our organization to that leading edge. So thank you.
Thank you.
Comments from our feedback from any of our directors?
I just want to echo that. I think this is very exciting and a model of kind of how we need to be thinking more broadly about resource sharing and how we're really optimizing all the resources of different agencies throughout the region. I hope we can get the CAT committee to test as we're going forward with the soft launch. I'm sure they've already been involved. And I would be interested in understanding kind of the roadmap going forward. I know that's always hard when you get to these big milestones, but it's natural because this is it's a field that's changing so quickly, and especially with the advent and incorporation of AI tools. So it'd be great once you get this formally launched and underway to maybe come back at some point and provide an update about what you see as the roadmap going forward and how it's tying into other sorts of features for regional navigation.
Thank you, Director. Aaron, I recall at APTA's conference, I think it was last year, there were other agencies that were touting similar software upgrades. So hopefully, going forward, we have an award coming our way in this area. I mean, I'm going to put that out there, but it was impressive to see some of the other agencies. And so it's nice, as the general manager says, innovation, innovation, innovation. Other comments from board members? Those online? Nope. Okay. Back to you, Director. General Manager.
Thank you. Thank you. As we look for revenue and ridership opportunities, I'm excited to share a win-win between TriMet and the Portland Trailblazers. Our Ticket to Ride program gives Timbers and Thorn fans, concert goers to Providence Park, free rides on TriMet, to and from the events through a monetary partnership we have with the Timbers leadership. This past winter, we partnered with the Oregon Zoo to bring Ticket to Ride to Zoo Lights, and it was absolutely successful. And people have been asking us, what about the Portland Trailblazers? So here we are, Chief Public Affairs Officer J.C. Vanetta, Director of Marketing and Business Development Lonnie Nielsen, have been working to engage the Blazers and have now scored a one-game-only Ticket to Ride event for the Blazers' annual Green Game. And it's in honor of Earth Month. While the Blazer fans will be able to use their game ticket to get a free ride on TriMet to and from this one game only on April 2nd, this is a great opportunity that we believe will open the door to future negotiations with the Blazers. So let's keep moving forward, new beginning. So something that we're on our way with and wanted to just let the board know. And then finally this morning, I rave about our employees. We have world-class, absolute world-class employees that work here at TriMet. And we all know that life can change in an instant. And I've been part of that change. That happened, this is something that happened one evening back in January. One of our bus operators at our Powell operations facility, that operator suffered a serious heart attack. And if not for the quick actions of fellow employees, that operator would not be making the recovery that they are today. Toa, I know you're here in the audience here, you and your wife. I want to just say to you from the bottom of my heart, I'm so very happy to see you here today, to see you here with us, to see you with your family, and also to see that you're recovering. Really appreciate that, and we're going to bring you up in a moment to talk. But before we do that, as far as your coworkers who stepped in when you needed them the most, we have them here today. I'd like to have Jeff Bell come up to the testimony table. If you could just come up and take a seat there, sir. Along with Bus Director Jesse Taylor, and Manager John Gibb. Let me start off by saying that, Jeff, you are a true hero. And I want to thank you for your quick thinking on that day. I'm going to stop for a moment and have both Jesse and John share with everybody and with the board, share with what happened before we turn it over to Jeff to say a few words. And then at the end of that, I'm going to bring Toa and his wife up to say a few words to the board as well. So I'll start with you, Jesse.
All right. Good morning. I'm here today to recognize Mr. Bell. Jeff Bell is a dedicated service worker at our Powell operations facility. He's always been a vital part of the TriMet team and family since March 18th, 2024. Throughout his 2 years of service, Jeff has consistently performed his duties at a high level, but on the night of January 9th, 2026, he went far beyond the call of duty. While on break, Jeff and operator Tua played a friendly game of ping pong. A few minutes later, Tua sat down and unexpectedly passed out. Jeff remembers yelling for help, but then things moved very quickly. Station agent Jordan Lopez called 911. Assistant bus supervisor Josh Stone grabbed an emergency kit. Jeff checked for a pulse, but didn't find one. At that point, operator Israel Smith started performing chest compressions, while Jeff, drawing from what he remembered of CPR training decades ago, performed mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Jeff and Israel alternated compressions and rescue breathing until the paramedics arrived. Another operator, Ben Collins, joined in while paramedics were setting up the defibrillator. Soon after, Tua was transported to the hospital, and I'd just like to say we are so thankful that he is here with us today through these actions of Jeff and the other outstanding TriMet employees. When faced with a sudden life or death crisis, Jeff didn't hesitate. While words cannot fully express our gratitude for his heroic actions, as well as others involved in saving Tua's life that night. We are profoundly proud and honored to have him on our team. Thank you, Jeff, for your courage and your actions that night. Thank you.
John, any comments?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to share a little bit about Jeff. Jeff's been on my teams for the last 2 years. Jeff has a diverse skill set with TriMet, from daily spotting functions to fueling to servicing the buses. Jeff has always gone the extra mile in all the aspects of his job. Jeff has, during his tenure here, he has trained employees, demonstrated safety in every aspect of his job that he performs, and has shown an interest in lifelong learning as he pursues the TTP program. Jeff is the type of person who leads by interest or by example. In a particular case, in this particular case, Jeff continued to do what he does daily and by demonstrating fast-acting support for his colleagues. I thank Jeff for modeling safety and being a very critical piece to our team. And thank you for everything you do.
And Jeff, before giving you the opportunity and to talk with the board, I would like to express my deepest gratitude for your actions as the general manager of this organization. Your quick thinking, your courage truly made a life-saving difference. And I'm honored to work with you. Your actions during that emergency was nothing short of heroic. Your bravery in this critical moment showed incredible character. And we're grateful, absolutely grateful for your calm, decisive response in protecting Tua. So thank you for everything that you've done. Really appreciate you. Yeah. So now we'd love to hear from you, sir.
Well, I want to say that it was an honor and a privilege to serve my fellow employee and fellow human in the best way that I could and knew how, and doing what I believe was the right thing to do out of just natural instinct, and in cooperation with the other employees that were also there assisting in rendering aid. And it's incredible that things turned out the way they did, and Toa is here. And I'm anxious to know if he's going to be back working soon. I want to thank you all here today, and that's about all I have to say. I just want to again thanks everybody, and
Well, we appreciate it. We'll have the board, any comments from the board as we move forward. And I'll ask John and Jesse if you guys can return back, and I would love for Toa and his wife to come forward. Any comments?
Okay. On behalf of the board, while you're coming up, thank you so much for your service and your time to save a life. I know you've probably replayed moment by moment as time has gone by. But it's just beautiful to see you sit next to the person whose life you've touched forever. That was one probably ping pong game that, will just, have just disappeared from memory. And thank you. I am so glad that there was a family member there that was calm, acted on instinct, and had love and passion, and it's hard to move you to be here with us today. Thank you. Other board members? Yeah. Online? Okay.
So, Toa, I wanted to bring you up, you and your family. I just met you in person. I want to let you know that this is what gets me up every morning to come to work, and it's you. You make this organization, all of you, all 3,600 plus of you, what makes me come to work. So I would love to have any thoughts from you towards Jeff or to the board.
Thank you much for the opportunity. You said it all, Mr. Suze, I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the bravery of my fellow co-workers that was there at Powell Garage, We're more than just bus operators, we're a family. At every garage and everything that we do, we work with each other, and it proved that with what happened to me. I wouldn't even be here, honestly, if it wasn't for the brave work from Jeff, Israel, and everybody that was there. So I thank God every day for putting me at the right place at the right time with my coworkers, because had I not been there with what happened to me, it would have ended bad for me. And I won't be here with my family in front of you all and enjoying life again. So Jeff, I know Israel and the rest of the crew's not here, but from the bottom of my heart and my family, we thank you guys for not just standing there and help, but jumped in and helped me out. I appreciate it very much. Absolutely. And I just want to say a quick thanks to all my TriMet family, for the thoughts and prayers for my recovery and all the donations and the help that we received from everyone. Thank you so much, from the bottom of my heart.
Well, we appreciate you. I know you have, Joy and Kirkbride, I seen earlier, all your family is here, and they're all watching on cameras as well. So with that, President Lewis, this concludes my report. I'd like to ask for a break for us to take a photo with Jeff and Toa.
Will do. Okay, let's take a five-minute break for a photo and some hugs. Hello, everyone. I'd like to bring our board meeting back to order. Okay, General Manager, did that conclude your report for
Yes,
today?
it does conclude the GM report, so thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we asked questions along the way, so I won't turn to the board. Now let us turn to today's consent agenda. Items appearing on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. This morning, the consent agenda consists of 3 items: approving the minutes from our last meeting of February 25th, 2026, resolution directing that all ordinances be read by title only, and third, resolution number 260310, updating the House Bill 2017 Transit Advisory Committee bylaws. I think we received the updates. Does any director wish to have any of these 3 items removed from the consent agenda? Okay. Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. We will now vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll now move to our resolutions on the regular agenda. Okay. The board will first convene as the TriMet Budget Committee to consider resolution number 260311, approving the proposed fiscal year 2027 annual budget for submission to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission. In our role as the TriMet Budget Committee, I now ask if any member of the public here wish to make comments on the proposed fiscal year 27 budget. Okay. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
Thanks, President Lewis, members of the board. The Oregon budget law requires all local governments to follow a specific process to adopt budgets. Acting in your role as the TriMet Budget Committee, your adoption of this resolution will fulfill an important step in that process. Assuming your approval, the proposed FY 2027 budget will be published as the approved version and submitted to the Multnomah County Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, TSCC. The TSCC will review the budget and hold a public meeting next month on April 22nd. Following the TSCC approval, TriMet's Finance Division will make final adjustments and come before the board for final consideration and formal adoption at the May 27th board meeting. A final budget must be adopted before the start of the new fiscal year on July 1st. Before I turn it over to Chief Financial Officer Nancy Young Oliver and Director of Budget Forecasting Michael Doan for a closer look at the proposed budget, I want to mention some known changes are coming to the budget in weeks ahead. The proposed budget reflects the initial measures we have taken to address our annual budget shortfall, the smaller service cuts that went into effect in November of 2025 and March of 2026, and the internal cuts and staffing reduction made in the fall of 2026. But the proposed budget does not reflect upcoming cost-cutting efforts, including service changes proposed to take effect August 23rd, 2026. Since you do not vote on the changes until next month at our April board meeting. Also, I'm finalizing with the executive leadership team another round of internal spending cuts as well as another staffing reduction. Those service and internal spending cuts will be included in the budget when it comes to you for adoption in May. Because of that, the FY 2027 adopted budget will come in less than the current proposed budget. As I turn it over to Nancy and Michael, I've asked them to bring you up to speed on the current structural deficit between expenses and revenues. Despite our efforts, that deficit is growing faster than we can shrink it. So over to you, Nancy.
Good morning, President Lewis and members of the board. So we have a presentation for you this morning, and in order to get to the proposed budget, it first starts with our financial forecast, which brings us back to our scorecard, and we're going to give you an update on that first this morning before we dive into the proposed budget itself. Advance, please. There we go. Takes just a minute to get that to respond. All right, so I want to take...
Nancy, can you pull your mic a little close? There we
Yeah,
go.
is that better?
Okay.
Okay, so I want to take you back to a year. A year ago, we sat in front of you and shared with you that we have a $300 million on average financial deficit. That financial deficit was based on our financial forecast from the spring of 2025. So now we're 1 year ahead, and things have changed. But at that time, it included a 15-year outlook, fiscal years 26 through fiscal years 2040. In that spring of 2025 forecast included things like the entire Forward Together service plan, full discretionary budgeting additions of $15 million a year. It included a ramp-up of the stated good repair general fund contribution to $134 million per year and growing each year after that. It was inclusive of all those above points in that 15-year projections of revenues and expenditures, and that combined identified a $300 million gap. The goal at that time was to solve that fiscal deficit over a 3-year period of time between fiscal years 26 through 29. We are now 1 year later, and we bring to you this update today. Impacting us is that our revenues are coming in under projections. I'll get into each one of those in just a minute. But because the revenues are coming in at less, that of course has a negative impact on us. In other words, it increases the deficit we're facing. Personnel expenses are coming in at a higher rate as well, also having a negative impact on our deficit. On a positive side, we have made some service changes. As you know, we've paused Forward Together for the time being. We made service reductions in the fall of 2025 and some service reductions here the spring of 2026. That has had a positive impact or decreased the deficit. We've also removed and reduced that budgetary addition that we make each year of $15 million. That has also had a positive impact on our deficit. And while we very much would like to increase our general fund funding to the capital program, we've had to pull that back significantly given the changes in our revenues. However, we are still anticipating growing that over the 15 years to come. That has also resulted in a positive impact to us. Now, there's one more item on there, and it's that double-edged sword. Because our continuing revenues are not coming in at the same pace as what we had originally projected a year ago, we have lower revenues, which decreases our ability to borrow. It's a double-edged sword in that it's negative that we don't have as much funding to borrow. However, it's also positive in that in our borrowing, those payments won't be as high going forward. So it depends on what side of that coin you want to sit on. Advance, please. So looking back at our foundation, what we presented to you a year ago was a $300 million on average annual deficit. We were going to look to new revenues. We thought at that time that there would be a doubling of the STIF, and we were going to propose for the board's consideration and potential approval a fare increase in 2029. We were looking at service cuts. Back of the napkin, Alan Lato and his team were working very diligently to look into those service cuts, and they were projected to be on average $159 million annually. And then we were looking to make spending reductions of $93 million annually. But as I just shared with you, we've had some pretty big changes. Advance, please. So let's talk about those revenues. As we look at the passenger fares, those passenger fares have decreased. The STIF funding has decreased. Our employer payroll taxes have decreased, as well as some of our operating grants. We have had some increases in revenues and things like our clean fuels credits, our advertising, so those things are positive. But overall, our revenues are down, lower than what we had anticipated a year ago, which has increased the deficit by $174 million. Advance, please. When we look at our expenditures are also increasing. We've made the decision to go forward with hydrogen fuel on the 82nd Avenue project, adding to our expenditures. Safety and security and ATP also had some additional expenditures that needed to be addressed in 2027. We've had some personnel service costs that have been updated. Very specifically, we have updated our vacancy factor. As we have gotten tighter on our personnel hirings and the positions available, we don't have as big of a vacancy factor. So we've also adjusted for that, as well as the working and wage agreement. That has increased our deficit by $52 million. Advance, please. On that positive side, we have executed those reduction and holding on those discretionary budgetary additions. We've also taken those service reductions, as already discussed. And as I said earlier, we've pulled back on our state of good repair general fund capital contribution. Altogether, those items executed has decreased our financial deficit by $281 million. Advance, please. So when you put those all together, where are we at today? So we're reforecasting our scorecard. We've made some progress. We are now looking at a deficit of $245 million. So that's a $55 million annual decrease with the actions we've taken to date. We're still looking to identify new revenue around $45 million or greater each year. That could come through a doubling of the STIF. It could come pending board approval of a fare increase or other options that might be out there that the team is exploring. In addition, there will be service cuts that are going to go forward, as already been discussed with you. And then we're looking at spending reductions of, on average, it'll be $128 million. As Sam referenced earlier, we will be taking some cuts that you will see in the adopted budget after the board has approved service changes and some other changes. That still leaves about $45 million that we haven't quite put our finger on to solve. It could come from a combination of new revenue, service cuts, or spending reductions. Advance, please. So that brings us then, understanding the forecast, it brings us into our proposed budget before you today. So we have some 4 key themes. Of course, fiscal sustainability. Our focus here is on essential services and operations to ensure the efficient use of our available resources. Going into fiscal 26, we took a 3% reduction in the general and administrative. During the year, we took a 5% reduction, and there'll be additional reductions going into the adopted budget. As we look at service, of course, that's why we're here, right? That's our core business. We need to maintain those core services throughout our region. Looking at safety and security, we've added the cost for 10 additional transit officers and maintaining a higher level of security officers. As we look at our state of good repair, our capital budget in total will be $213 million in fiscal year 2027, of which 118.9 is dedicated to state of good repair components. That includes maintaining as well as modernizing the existing system. Those state of good repair projects surround maintenance, specifically maintenance infrastructure, IT infrastructure, and the replacement of some of our light rail vehicles. The balance of the capital program is dedicated to corridor updates, upgrades, including the 82nd Avenue, TV Highway, and Better Bus. Advance, please. As we look at our resources coming in the door for fiscal year 2027, the total budgeted resources is just under $950 million versus our estimated actual for 2026, which is $1.072 billion. As you can see, we're anticipating $124.3 million less. As we dive into some of those changes, first of all, let's look at our payroll taxes. The payroll taxes continue to grow, but not at our historical rate of over 5%. It's now coming in at around 2.5%, which is a significant change for us. So the impact there is that we've got some employers who are moving out of the district, as well as some employers who are taking a reduction in force. When we look at our federal operating grants, this is an area that's going to fluctuate based on the grant drawdowns. As we look at our federal operating grants, it makes up 14% of our total revenues. We do have one grant expiring in 2026, so that helps account for some of the decrease there. We have two major formula funds that generally provide around $100 million annually. Those two formula funds are directly impacted by the operating costs, our passenger miles, and boardings. So when you change the service, you change our boardings, you change our passenger miles, but we also need to show a decrease in our operating expenses. There's an inverse relationship there. If your boardings and your passenger miles decrease, but your operating expenses stay the same, they look at it and say, you're not as efficient. So if we decrease our operating expenses but can increase our boarding and our passenger miles, they look at it and say, you're more efficient, and then that is reflected in our formula funding. As we look at our capital resources, you'll see that there is a big increase there, and for 2027, it's going to make up 10% of our total resources. This consists of federal, state, and local grants for very specific purposes. It's volatile from one year to the next, depending on what projects and the cash flow of those individual projects. It's important to understand, though, when we look at those CIP resources coming from external resources, that they are earmarked and dedicated to a specific purpose. Management nor the board has the ability to change the use of those funds. As we look at our other revenues, at about 7% of the total inflow, that includes interest, things like advertising, contracted services, and also includes our pass-through and funding exchanges. As we look at our passenger revenues, you see that's down by about 3.2 million. It's a 5.3% decline. Post-pandemic decline in ridership continues to have a negative impact on us. Also, fare evasion, and as well as the passenger revenue, it includes anticipated service reductions. Finally, as we look at that state and local revenue, that you see a big decrease there. The biggest piece of that is our STIF funding. STIF funding comes to TriMet in the form of a grant. In late 2025, we received updated projections from the Oregon Department of Revenue indicating a 38% reduction in the STIF funding that we would receive. That results in $29.7 million less than what we had originally been told. So as you can see, the resources have been impacted quite significantly. Advance, please. As we look at our requirements, in 2027, our total budgeted requirements are $1.2 billion, versus our estimated 2026 requirements is $1,071,000. As you can see, that's an increase in expenditures of $134.1 million. When we look at some of the differences there, when we look at our operations, okay, last year was $569 million, going into 2027. Currently, we have budgeted at $587 million. The biggest impact there, of course, operations is transportation, maintenance, and training. We have some significant operating requirements there that, in a sense, we have no control over. We have to meet the demand for our ATP program. We have a working and wage agreement that has been negotiated and is in place. Currently, we are dealing with significant inflation in our diesel fuel, and this is outside of our control. We're also looking at the cost for parts of buses, trains, facilities, as well as service impacts. When it comes to the capital improvement program, as I shared earlier, our total program is going to be just almost $214 million. Of that, we have 50 projects. Of those 50 projects, 42 projects include state of good repair elements. Of the 5 major projects we have going forward, it's 82nd Street, TV Highway, light rail vehicle replacement, interstate bridge replacement, and our ERP system replacement. As we look at those general and administrative costs, which make up 17% of our entire requirements, we have some high-level expenses that, again, are in a sense out of our control, but we must have. For example, finance carries various insurance programs, something that we are required to have. We have leases that have been negotiated and are in place. In information technology, we have software licensing fees. We have safety and security services and transit police. When it comes to our debt service, you see a jump up there. That jump up is a direct reflection that we will be going out in June for a bond issuance of up to $150 million as previously approved by the board. When we look at our OPEB, it's maintaining pretty consistent from year to year, as well as our other non-operating costs. Contingency, of course, is set at 3% of our operating requirements according to the strategic financial plan as approved by the board. Advance, please. As you look at the resources coming in and our requirements for fiscal year 2027, we can't ignore the fund balance. So in your waterfall chart that you have on the screen, I want to just really demonstrate the impact to our fund balance. So we're starting fiscal year 2027 with a projected fund balance of $779.6 million. That is made up of restricted and unrestricted funds. Again, those restricted funds are restricted by third parties that we cannot make any other decision with. When you add in our revenues of $947.7 million and subtract out our anticipated expenses of $1.2 billion, that would leave us with an ending fund balance of $522.2 million. Said another way, we're going to begin the year with 7.1 months of operating reserves, and we're going to end the year with 4.6 months operating reserves. Our planned expenditures are forecasted to exceed our revenues by $257 million. And that unrestricted fund balance is expected to decrease by $194 million. Advance. Let's look at it another way, just in columnar form. We're going to start the year with the $779 million, add in our resources of $947 million, subtract out our requirements of $1.2 billion, giving us an ending fund balance of $522 million. That's a $257.4 million, and that can be found on page 110 of your proposed budget. That $522.2 million is split between restricted and unrestricted fund balance. Unrestricted fund balance is projected to be $358.5 million. Advance, please. I want to dig into that $358.5 million a little bit more here. When you look at the $358.5 million, we are required by our strategic financial plan policy to have 2 months of operating reserves. That's $156.3 million. We have accounts receivable of $106.6 million. That's money that is due TriMet, but I don't yet have it in our wallet that we can spend it. We have $49.9 million in materials, inventory, and prepaid expenses. That's a value to us, but it's money that's already been spent. We can't spend it a second time. We do have some accounts payable where we owe other parties some funds, and we have received some funds, some revenue that we have not yet earned, and until it's earned, it represents a liability on our books. At the end of the day, in fiscal year 2027, that means that our ending unrestricted fund balance or our strategic reserves will have dropped to $81.2 million. Advance, please. As we look at our budget timeline, we released the proposed budget to you on March 11th as well as to the public. And here we are today in the Budget Committee meeting asking you for your approval of the fiscal year 2027 proposed budget. With your approval, the proposed or approved budget will go to the TSCC for a hearing on April 22nd. And then we would look to adopt the budget on May 27th during the board meeting. However, when we come to you in May, I want to emphasize here is that the impact of the service adjustments that you will take a vote on next month, as well as some general and administrative reductions that we will be taking here at the beginning of fiscal 27, will be reflected in the adopted budget. What you will see is that $247 million deficit is going to materially change. In other words, it's going to materially decrease. And so that gives you something to look forward to. I know it's bittersweet, but it's something that we have to do. So again, then July 1st, that adopted budget would be released and implemented. We are required by Oregon budget law to have the budget adopted, so in order for us to continue working on July 1st. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
I was just curious, practically, well, first of all, thank you. Thank you for everything. Practically, once we have the hearing next month, and then for the, assuming the service cuts are made, the adopted budget, do we have to sort of communicate back to the tax board at all about the additional changes? How, I just, it's very interesting to me that, you know, because of timing, this is what it is, but we go next month, we present, and then we'll, of course, tell them, they will know about all the details and what's been going on. But then would their approval be inclusive of the potential changes or likely changes that's being made?
Yeah, thank you, Director Kim. That's a great question. When we have the hearing on April 22nd with the TSCC, they will have a list of questions. Prior to that meeting, Finance has already been meeting with the TSCC and explaining all the details behind the proposed budget and the change that we anticipate making getting to the adopted budget. They will have some general questions for us regarding those changes, specifically the service changes, and then high level what general and administrative types of changes that we will be making in order to get to the adopted budget.
Thank you.
Director Graham?
Thank you. I just want to say first, thank you for preparing such a thorough budget report. I thought it was very well laid out. It was very clear. And it explained the interdependencies of all the different parts and pieces of the budget. So I know that takes a lot of preparation, and I really appreciate that. So, and thank you to your teams. I know that is a group team effort. I have some big questions and some small questions as I read through it. One is knowing what's going on with fuel and just other uncertainty in economic markets. I wonder if there is a discussion or could be a discussion around whether the contingency is enough. Contingency going into this next budget. I know that that has implications for cuts and balances in other areas, but I just feel that there's a lot that we don't know that is not in the control of TriMet around costs and impacts, especially on fuel, but on other sort of imports and other things that are required to continue to run the business.
Great, thank you for that question, Director Graham. And it's a good observation, is that we really don't know what's going to happen with the fuel.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, you know, contingency is supposed to be used for those things unknown and unanticipated at the beginning of the year. Our first line of defense, though, is to first look at underspend within existing appropriation units. And that's what we're doing this year. In a few minutes here, we're going to bring a resolution and asking for a budget transfer for fiscal year 2026. And included in there is because of the impact of the fuel. We just want to make sure that we're covered and we don't go over our appropriation limit. Going into fiscal 2027, as a general basis, we set contingency at 3%, which is 28.1, if I remember off the top of my head, $1 million. We don't anticipate any other larger activity in fiscal year 2027. So I would first, again, say we will go to underspend in our organizational units and pull from there before we would pull from contingency. So thank you for that.
You have another one? Yeah, go ahead, yes.
I read the
No, go
report.
ahead.
They didn't put it together.
No.
So let's see, another question that I had just generally, and this is for my understanding, knowing that personnel costs continue to be the largest single driver of the TriMet budget, I'm wondering, and this may not be something that you could answer right away, but as a percentage of the overall budget, is that roughly in line with other agencies of our size across the country, personnel costs?
Yeah, so in general, yes. With a working and wage agreement, they can all be unique and have nuances that one has and another one doesn't, and vice versa. So there's always a challenge in that and where that lands. But in addition to that, we've made some decisions, right? So we have a defined benefit plan that has to be funded. We have an OPEB plan that has to be funded. Okay? And so when you start adding those in, as you know, we have a strategic financial plan that we dedicate, combined together between union and non-union, $30.5 million annually to fund the pensions, and then anything left over goes to fund the OPEB. It would be wonderful if both of those were fully funded because we could divert those funds to other purposes. We've also chosen, to issue debt. Director Kim, we've had a conversation before. You asked, what would it look like if we were debt-free? Well, when you look at the total debt payments, 88 million a year, I'd sure like to have that 88 million right now for other purposes. So,
Yes, thank you. And that kind of relates to another of my question. I know that we have sort of policy limits around how much debt and how much debt payments. And I understand the investments in state of good repair. I'm wondering if there are any policies around the amount of general funds that TriMet contributes as its portion of capital projects. And are there any policy limits around that in deciding to take on capital projects?
yeah, I'm going to let Michael answer this one.
Awesome. All right, thank you. As far as policy limits on what the general fund contribution is, not per se as a maximum threshold. What we have done with the debt policy, though, is that we want bond funds to be matched with general funds, and the policy does state something to that effect. 10%, Nancy, do you recall? Yeah, all right. 10% in that policy is what that matches with the bond funds. In the forecast, what we've done long-term is 50 million is kind of what the cap is. But we have to monitor the fiscal constraints of the agency and the operating pieces that go with it too. At the same time, we got to have our assets in a state of good repair. And if they don't exist like that, then we can't even operate, right? So we try to kind of balance it out. This year is right up against that 50 million. The next year, we're going to try to grow that by 4% and have it around 52 million and 54 million and kind of grow it. In 2029, forecast-wise, we do want to try to bump that up, but we'll have to reevaluate where we are fiscally at that point in time.
This is a minor question. But in the detail throughout the budget, there were a number of different line items that listed decrease based on budget realignment. Is that the budget realignment that has already happened, or the one that is in this, or what's coming?
It's for those actions already taken.
Already taken?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I think just my last point is more of a comment based on some of the testimony that we have heard over the last many months focused on service cuts, which none of us want to do. I also want to recognize that the agency is taking some very challenging decisions on now related to administration and personnel, and not focused on trying to balance the agency budget solely on service cuts, because that is impossible. And so I want to state that because we heard it again this morning, and I recognize that this is an extremely challenging time for the agency, and that you are weighing a whole set of really very difficult decisions, and I just appreciate the diligence and thoughtfulness that has gone into that to date.
Okay, online, Director Flowers.
Thank you so much, President Lewis. Just a couple quick questions to make sure that I'm tracking this correctly. So if I'm understanding correctly, we have a new set of numbers that reflect an increase in reductions. In other words, we have less money than we expected to have, despite all of the actions that we're taking, including cutting service and reducing personnel and administrative costs. Is that correct? So in other words, the budget deficit has increased. Is that right?
Thank you, Director Flowers, for the question and asking for the clarification. So when you look at the decrease in revenues and the increase in expenditures, yes, overall, if you look at those individually, the deficit has increased. However, we have taken a number of actions already that has allowed us to decrease it. So we're at 245 million annually. Now, it's really important to understand that the proposed service cuts that will be discussed at next month's board meeting, as well as a significant amount of general and administrative cuts that we are going to be taking, are not yet displayed in this budget. So when we come to you in May, I'm going to give you a reconciliation of all of those changes, the dollar amounts and percentages where things have been decreased on the general and administrative side, and the adopted budget would have all of those changes in it at that time. So you will see that while right now we're displaying a $247 million a budgetary deficit this year, that's going to materially decrease that deficit in the budget. I just want to pull that out. So in my last slide, I showed that our remaining reserves would be 81 million. We anticipate that being higher once we get to the adopted budget.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to understand is the actions we've already taken and we're planning to take were meant to close that gap entirely for this fiscal year. So am I understanding correctly that that gap has grown and thus we're going to need to make additional cuts on top of the cuts that we've already talked about to service and to general and administrative costs to close
Yes.
our gap?
So so as I was saying, we have taken quite a few actions between the pausing the forward together and the service cuts and a few of the 3% and 5% general and administrative cuts. However, because our revenues are decreasing and some expenditures are increasing, it does increase the budget gap. And we had targeted a 3-year period to close the gap, not to close it all in 1 year. I think that's important to remember.
Sure. I guess what I'm trying to get to is how much has the gap gone up? Because I understand that we've already taken actions that aren't reflected in the numbers that you just provided. But if I'm tracking correctly, the gap has gone up. I just want to know what that margin is.
So as a result of the revenue decrease, the deficit went up 174 million. As a result of the expenditure increases, the deficit went up 52 million. On the reverse side, because of the discretionary pauses that we implemented, it decreased the deficit by 56 million. The service reductions have decreased it by 129 million, and we changed our state of good repair target, which gave us an additional 96 million.
Copy. And these are numbers that are projected over a 3-year time span, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what I'm still not getting the answer I'm looking for here, which would be, I think, cleaner and simpler than the response you're giving me right now. I understand that we had already taken actions that have decreased the 3-year deficit in material ways. You just listed a couple of them. We talked about the overall gap being a $300 million gap over 3 years. Can you give me the updated number for what the 3-year deficit, the 3-year gap is, and exclude the actions that we've already taken to reduce that deficit?
Yes. So we started with 300 million. The revenue decrease is added 174 million, so that takes us to 474 million. The expenditure increase is another 52 million, which takes us up to 526 million.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. That is helpful to know. As we're going through this stuff, though, I can't help but wonder how soundly our projection methodology is. Like, it makes no sense for me. I'll just give you a very concrete example of this, that we were using a doubling of the STIF as our projected budgeting tool to determine, how we set the budget for a multi-billion-dollar agency, when that is a complete hypothetical that is entirely reliant on and subject to the whims of the political climate in a given moment. Like, there's no meaningful way for us to root real numbers in hypotheticals like that. So why did we choose to go with the best case scenario in this one particular instance rather than using the worst case scenario as our safer methodological tool for projecting out our budget?
Yeah, that's a great question. So first of all, it's important to understand that TriMet has not ever put the doubling of the STIF into our budget. We never anticipated actually receiving it. We were very conservative because we recognize it's very hypothetical. We don't know if it's going to pass. When we talk about a plan, though, to close the gap on that budget deficit, it is reasonable for us to say, well, where could new money come from? It could come from a doubling of the STIF. It could come pending board approval from a fare increase. It could come from a number of other options that we have a team specifically focused on internally to identify new revenues that might be available to TriMet depending on, statutes and laws. So I think as far as, that goes, it's important that we separate what our plan is for closing the deficit and then what we actually budget for and include in that forecast. And so something that's hypothetical like that, we do not include in our budget. We don't put it in there. We can always accept any money that anybody wants to give us during a year. We don't have to stop or redo our budget because our budget is a spending plan. So it's only if you're going to change that spending plan do you have to come back and get approvals and the TSCC involvement. Did that help, Director Flowers? And I also want to comment on our employer payroll, because that's our biggest source of revenue. So traditionally and historically, our employer payroll tax has increased on average 5+% per year. We work very closely with Eco Northwest on those projections, and I would say that Eco Northwest comes in almost spot on every single year in their projections. But what they don't have available to them, and neither do we, is how many employers are going to move out of our footprint this next year. How many of them are going to do a reduction in force? It is completely out of our control, and it's a very difficult element to the projection of our employer payroll taxes and how to forecast them, because that is an extreme unknown for us. Michael, is there anything you'd like to add on the revenues?
No, Director Flowers, you asked earlier what time period. Keep in mind, this is over a long period of time, 15 years of projections that are going into these annualized numbers that we're showing. The revenue projections, the biggest impact that we've done is adjusting the percentage increase or rate of increase on the payroll taxes. We did have the 5%. Eco Northwest told us it was 5% for a little bit in their first projections. We haven't got our April projections updated yet. I'm very curious to see what those come out to be. But with results coming in last year, we did reduce those down to 2.5% for the next 2 to 3 years, and then kind of that ramp back up. And we'll see how that goes over time. The projection of the STIF and including that originally in the 300 million, I think we as an agency had a lot of optimism when we were considering that back over the summer, or early summer, late spring of last year of it going through. That obviously did not work out. It is not in our forecast anymore of that projection. We do want to seek revenue. We don't know exactly what form that'll take and what it will be, but we're hoping, as Nancy stated, that there is a team working on trying to see what those different revenue avenues may be and what they could potentially yield us over time. So we're going to hopefully remain optimistic, but to your point, that's not something that we're going to bank on right now. It's not in that long-term projection.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I think what I'm trying to communicate in the most concise way possible is that I don't think we actually would be wise to remain optimistic about any of these things. I think it would be much wiser for us and more prudent for us to be cynical in the way that we approach these forecast numbers, these projections, and these anticipated new revenue streams, because we aren't the only entity being squeezed, right? Many of the entities that feed into our broader ecosystem are being squeezed in tremendous ways as well. So, yeah, we're going to have to get far more creative, and we're going to have to be far more precise in the way that we methodologically approach the question of putting together both projections and a budget if we want to close this gap and prevent it from continuing to grow. The last thing I'll say here, because I know Director Frisbee also has her hand up, is that it's entirely unacceptable in my mind that we as a board are just now learning about what a $226 million increase in our 3-year projected budget gap, as we're getting ready to go ahead and approve our FY 2027 annual budget. That is, I don't even have words to describe how unacceptable that is. let me just leave it there. I'm sure Tyler has thoughts on this as well.
Thank you, Director Flowers. General Manager has a word, and then we'll go to Director Frisbee.
Director Flowers, just following back up with you, are you talking about the numbers that Nancy just gave you just a moment ago on the 174 million and the 52 million additional to the $300 million?
Yes.
Okay, and just to let you know, those numbers just came out at the beginning of this year. So we just received the numbers updated. So as soon as we got those numbers in, I started having conversations. So this information is probably a month old, if that.
Copy. I think with something this important and critical to the health, longevity, and really existence of our agency, as soon as we get information like that, that's something that the board should be aware of.
Yeah, copy that, and we'll have further conversation.
Thank you. Director Frisbee.
Thank you. And sorry for the white noise in the background. I was trying to get the baby to sleep. I do want to echo Director Flowers' comments. And, you know, a month might not seem like a long time, but it actually is. And I think I would re-emphasize that in the context of the fiscal environment we're in, a month delay in bringing this to the board seems like a misstep to me. This is something that we should have been grappling with and trying to support the agency in addressing for as much time as we have had available to us. So I want to emphasize that. I would also like to comment on sort of the bigger picture piece of this, which is, and I think Director Flowers also made a good point. We, unfortunately, this is not a time to be optimistic. When we are looking at public agency revenue, we see this across the board locally, with other local governments getting gobsmacked by reduced revenue. And we also are seeing it nationally as transit agencies across the country are addressing serious structural challenges. These are not one-time blips. These are actually the system that we have developed for funding transit, and pretty much every major transit agency across the country is no longer working. And so this is not that leads me to my first comment, which is I am becoming increasingly concerned that a 3-year timeline for balancing this budget is both unrealistic and that it will require overly painful cuts over the period of the next 3 years, and it is insufficient, and that addressing this problem is actually requires a structural change in thinking about how we fund our agency, and we will likely not be able to answer it fully in 3 years. I think so I would like for us to think more deeply about how we are looking at this problem, because this is not a 1-year or 2-year problem that we're going to solve. If we are going to quote unquote balance this budget in 3 years, we are doing it with deep service cuts that I am very concerned would send us into a death spiral in terms of what we deliver to the folks who depend on us and to the folks who want to depend on us. My second point is somewhat aligned with this, which is we need to assume that as we are, this is the other point that I have been making when we talk about cuts that we are seeing right now, that we need to develop a plan so that those cuts do not become a death spiral. And we should assume until we start implementing other measures to keep and ideally increase ridership as we are making these cuts, until we are implementing those in combination with these cuts, we will see revenue decreases from our ridership dependent revenue sources. So I am re-emphasizing, I really would like us to have a long-term plan, I would like us to be working on a long-term plan to increase ridership and to continue to meet the needs of our region in this new era. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Frisbee. General Manager.
Thanks, Director Frisbee. Really appreciate that. You and I have had conversations. That's top of mind for me on a long-term plan to look at how we can reinstall some of the service that we are going to move forward, possibly with board vote, to cut. How quick can we get it back installed, and where can we find the revenues from? I agree about not cutting the budget or cutting service and becoming a death spiral. One of the things I do want to say is I have directed staff to give updates to the board through the budget scorecard every month. And we've been in front of the board every month with this. So if we need to meet more frequently, because I don't meet with each one of you once a month, I meet with you every quarter. So if we need to meet more frequently, let's plan that, and I'll make sure I rearrange my schedule so that we meet frequently to take a look at revenues and continue to talk about plans. So I will set something up very quickly with you here after this meeting.
I just think, sorry, can I respond?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, President Lewis. General Manager, I would just encourage you, I think we all trust you. We all trust your leadership at this organization. And when there is something significant, particularly related to the budget in this time, I would encourage you that is a moment to call and reach out to board members so that we can start thinking and being prepared for these efforts and collaborate with you as the agency works to address this.
Will do.
Any other comments from board members? Just checking. Director Kellogg, are you with us?
Yes, I'm with you. I'm hearing it, but I'm not in a position to be able to reply extensively at this point. I do want to say I appreciate all the discussion, though.
Thank you. Okay, just want to make sure I got words from you. Okay. Yes, one more comment from General Manager.
So I want to thank Nancy and Michael and board, as your approval is critical to the budget process. And without it today, we're risking not having an adopted budget by July 1st, the start of the fiscal year 2027. I strongly recommend your approval of this resolution.
Is there a motion to approve Resolution 260311?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment further before we vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Having completed our work on the proposed fiscal year 2027 budget resolution, I now adjourn the TriMet Budget Committee, and we will reconvene as the TriMet Board of Directors. Thank you. And thank you, Nancy. Thank you. Okay. Okay. We will now consider Resolution 260312, authorizing the transfer of appropriated funds within the fiscal year 2026 budget. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
Okay, thank you, President Lewis. I would like to have Nancy and Michael stay with us in case the board has any questions about this resolution. So President Lewis, members of the board, this resolution requests the board authorization to authorize a transfer of nearly $32 million in appropriated funds within the FY 2026 budget. During a fiscal year, TriMet may need to transfer appropriated funds internally among divisions to match revised expenditure requirements. State budget law regulates the transfer of appropriation funds within or between divisions, and such transfers must have board approval. The transfer authorized through this resolution includes nearly $28 million moved from our transportation, transit system and asset support, finance and administrative services, labor relations and human resource services, and engineering and construction divisions to our maintenance, IT, and safety and security divisions. Another $4 million will come from contingency program. The transfers are necessary for our purchase of light rail vehicles and parts to replace the Type 2 LRVs as the board approved in January, as well as for necessary overhaul and replacement of vehicle parts. Also, the transfer of funds specifically to maintenance is in response to anticipated increases in fuel costs due to the conflict in Iran. The transfer of funds also supports our security fencing project at the Ruby Junction Rail Operations Facility and our CCTV cameras on board our vehicles, as well as several IT projects to ensure reliability of our network data systems, max power systems, and CCTV systems. The transfers are an internal reallocation of budget funds and will have no impact on TriMet's adopted FY26 budget. Your approval is recommended.
Thank you, General Manager. Before we have comments, is there a motion to approve Resolution 260312?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment from the board before we vote? Okay, hearing and seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. We will now consider Resolution 260313, authorizing a contract with Shecky Northwest Sales, Inc. for the purchase of up to 60 replacement vehicles for Lyft Paratransit services. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
President Lewis, members of the board, our FTA mandate Lyft Paratransit service transport those who have disabling conditions and are unable to use our fixed route service. TriMet's Lyft fleet includes 284 Lyft-equipped vehicles. While the Oregon Department of Transportation sets a minimal useful life of 5 years or 150 miles, our strong maintenance practices extend the life of the Lyft vehicles to about 9 years or 230,000 miles. Even so, we anticipate replacing up to 60 vehicles within the next 15 months as they exceed useful life standards. This resolution authorizes a new contract with Shecky for the purchase of these vehicles replacements at a total contract amount of approximately $11.05 million, which includes the vehicles themselves and a change order allowance. The vehicles will be funded primarily through $9.4 million in state and federal grants. These grant funds cannot be used for service and must be used for accessible paratransit equipment. The rest of the money for the vehicle purchases, $1.34 million, will come from the TriMet's general fund as a required local match. The contract amount is included within our current fiscal year budget and FY27's proposed budget. This procurement leverages a state of Oregon price agreement, enabling TriMet to leverage the purchasing power of multiple agencies and obtain more favorable pricing than we could secure our own. Shecky was the only vendor that met our specifications, and all vehicles will complete a Buy America audit prior to purchase. I recommend your approval.
Thank you. Before we go to questions and comments, is there a motion to approve Resolution 260313?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Oh, thanks, Tyler.
Thank you. It's been moved and second. Does anyone wish to comment? Feedback from the board before we vote? Any questions? Anyone online? Nope, okay. It has been moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you. We will now consider Resolution 260314, authorizing a contract modification for construction manager / general contractor services with Just Bucket Excavating, Inc. for redesign of the Beaverton Transit Center. General Manager, do you have any comments on this resolution?
President Lewis, members of the board, the Beaverton Transit Center has served our riders for nearly 40 years, but today it no longer meets the needs of our operations or current TriMet standards. Bus operations have outgrown the original 1987 design, but this project will bring the facility into a state of good repair. By realigning curbs and sidewalks, we will better accommodate 40 and 60-foot buses. Planned improvements also include high-capacity shelters, improved lighting, security cameras, updated signage, wayfinding, ADA and landscaping upgrades, the installation of 2 electric bus chargers, and in April of last year, following a competitive RFP process, the board approved a CMGC contract with Just Bucket Excavating, or JBE, for pre-construction services. Since then, 2 modifications have brought the contract total to approximately $676,000. Today, we are requesting to modify the contract to include the negotiated total contract price for construction, adding the $5.41 million plus a 10% change order allowance increases the total contract amount to just over $6.6 million. A bus and bus facility FTA grant specific for projects such as this Beaverton Transit Center rehabilitation, and 2 DEQ grants for electric vehicle charging and infrastructure cover most of the cost of the project. The grants and remaining funds are already included in the Engineering and Construction Division's FY 2026 and proposed FY 2027 budgets. While rebidding the project is an option, it will likely result in delays, increased costs, and uncertainty. Because of that, and the excellent performance of JBE thus far, I strongly recommend approval of this resolution to improve the experience of riders and employees and make our bus service through the transit center more efficient.
Thank you. It has been moved and second. Any comments, feedback from board? Seeing none present, none from online. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you, motion carries. Thank you. Are you ready? Ready? Oh, okay. I will now request our General Counsel, Shelley Devine, to read ordinance number 381 by title only.
Thank you, Madam President. Ordinance number 381 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, amending and updating TriMet Code, Chapter 19. This is the second reading.
Thank you, Shelley. General Manager, following the second reading, do you have any comments on ordinance 381?
Thanks, President Lewis, members of the board. Ordinance 381 will make necessary important amendments to TriMet Code Chapter 19 with updates to definitions, procedural language, lift fare offerings, and employer pass language. One of our primary changes addresses a significant challenge and opportunity related to our Lyft paratransit service and providers that offer Medicaid-funded transportation benefits. As was shared at last month's board meeting, TriMet contracts with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services to provide premium paratransit service to riders who receive transportation benefits paid for by Medicaid. Any use of this premium paratransit service must occur under a formal contract at an agreed-upon rate and must be covered by Medicaid funds. Instead of following that requirement, some providers are buying annual Lyft passes, which allows them to avoid the administrative workload necessary to meet contractual procedures. This leads to TriMet funds, not Medicaid funds, subsidizing the premium services provided for these paratransit riders. This generates a substantial revenue loss for TriMet. With the approval of this ordinance, we will discontinue the annual Lyft pass and make other changes as documented in corresponding Exhibits A and B. Discounting the annual Lyft pass is projected to lead to the recovery of about $5 million in revenue over 2 years. Your approval is strongly recommended.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance 381?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second? Okay, thank you. It has been moved and second that we adopt the ordinance. Do any members have any questions or comments regarding ordinance 381 before we vote? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we will now have a roll call vote on ordinance 381, and I will ask General Counsel Shelley Devine to call roll.
Thank you, President Lewis. I will start with the board members that are online. So I'll start with Director Flowers,
Aye.
Director Frisbee,
Aye.
Director Kellogg. We'll come back to Director Kellogg. Director Graham,
Aye.
Director Kim.
Aye.
Director Kellogg, are you back on? We'll move to Director Lewis.
Aye.
We have 5 votes in favor, so ordinance 381 passes.
Okay, thank you. I will now request General Counsel Devine to read ordinance 382 by title only.
Thank you, President Lewis. Ordinance number 382 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, adopting FY 2027 service changes, revising route designations, and amending TriMet Code Chapter 22. This is the first reading and public hearing.
Thank you. The board held a special public forum meeting last Wednesday to collect additional public testimony related to ordinance 382. At this time, I will open public hearing ordinance 382. Again, for service changes, revisions, route destinations, and amending TriMet Code Chapter 22. Is there anyone that is present at this time that would like to provide testimony? Okay. There is none at this time. General Manager, following our first reading and public hearing, do you have any comments on ordinance 382?
Thanks, President Lewis. Members of the board, ordinance 382 is necessary for the adoption of our fiscal year 2027 service plan. As you are aware, we must adjust our service to align spending with our resources. The larger service cuts proposed for this August come after the internal spending and staff reductions last fall and additional internal cuts currently being planned. I want to say this to the public and to everyone here in this room. I do not want service cuts. And I need to state that to you, board, as the general manager of this organization. And I know none of you want service cuts as well. It is truly a last resort for any transit agency, but we must make changes to make our service more efficient and responsive to changes in our ridership as we balance the budget. I have a number of staff who will be presenting and sharing information on our process, the changes influenced by the feedback we received in the month of January, and our Title VI assessment of the impact of changes and cuts would have on minority and low-income populations. So let's begin with Jennifer Kuzer, our Director of Community Affairs and Engagement, Tom Mills, our Director of Mobility Planning and Policy, and Grant O'Connell, our Manager of Service Planning and Development. After these speak, Executive Director of Public Access and Innovation, John Gardner, and Jake Ware, our Manager of Title VI and Public Access, will come up to share the draft Title VI assessment. Following their remarks, the team will be available to answer questions. So Jennifer, let's start with you.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you go to the next slide, please? General Manager Dessou just walked through the agenda of what we'll be discussing today, so let's move on to our next slide. This is just a recap of where we've been and where we're going. Since the beginning, you can go to the next slide, thanks. Since beginning our effort to balance the budget last year, we've been working toward a target of reducing service by 10%. That started with the smaller cuts beginning, or what we've been calling trimmings last November and earlier this month. And that was all about reducing frequency during lower ridership times on a handful of lines. And in the meantime, last fall, we started an outreach process for larger service cuts. After 2 rounds of outreach, feedback, and refinement, we're bringing you a package of larger service cuts in today's ordinance. After these FY27 cuts go into effect this August, we will start outreach and planning for FY28 service cuts of a similar scale. Next slide. So zooming into the FY27 service cuts that are contained in today's ordinance, you'll recall that we started outreach last fall about 9 types of cuts that we could make. And that information helped the service planning team develop a proposal for specific line-by-line cuts. We then spent the month of January getting feedback on those specific changes. And based on that feedback, the team made some refinements that are in the final proposal in today's ordinance, which was released to the public on March 11th, and with which you had the public forum on last week. And now here we are today with the first reading of the ordinance. After the ordinance and budget are adopted this spring, the cuts would go into effect on August 23rd, which is the Sunday before school starts. Next slide. So a recap of the outreach last fall. We asked for feedback about people's priorities, asking people to rank 9 different types of cuts that we could make, ranking from cut last to cut first, from cut first to cut last. That survey had over 4,800 respondents, and we heard strong support for beginning with strategic network-oriented efficiency cuts, minimizing what could be seen as redundancy where lines travel close together. And we also heard people very supportive of keeping or making cuts last to late night service, weekend service, and high frequency service. Next slide. So based on the feedback from the fall, the service planning team developed a proposal for specific line-by-line cuts that we spent the month of January gathering feedback on. We used maps and descriptions of the proposed changes, all in the context of our budget challenges and how this proposal responds to what we heard in the earlier outreach process. In January, we had significantly more engagement with about 288,000 webpage views and more than 8,100 survey respondents. Next slide. Like in the fall, we distributed information through our very robust digital information channels. Our news releases led to media coverage by all major outlets. We also sent a postcard to over 253,000 addresses near proposed changes. Our on-street customer service team rode the system and handed out information on board and at transit centers. We also had information at all 725 digital information displays and some static signs at some key stops. And our deepest engagement is at our open house events, where we can have one-on-one conversations with people. 780 people attended those events, which were promoted through our webpage, but some were by invitation only through our community partners, where we could focus on, with immigrant populations and people with limited English proficiency. Next slide. What did we ask? The service cuts proposal was very data-driven, so the outreach process was about ground truthing the proposal to understand how it will affect riders and see if we were missing any information. The survey asked, which lines do you ride and where? And then it populated subsequent questions based on those responses. For each relevant line, people were asked how much the change would impact your travel experience with a 5-point scale from not a lot to a whole lot. We also asked demographic questions, and like our earlier outreach phase, didn't see a lot of difference in responses across demographic groups. Next slide. What did we hear? There were over 8,100 survey respondents and 5,500 qualitative comments. Our senior research analyst, Lindsay Alley, went deep into analyzing the impact ratings alongside the comments and coding them by theme and intensity. The lines that got the most comments with a high degree of intensity were line 19 and Max Green Line. For line 19, most of the comments were about the proposed elimination of the route in Northeast Portland, people feeling like the alternative services were too far away. And in the Southeast Portland portion of line 19, there was a concentration of concern around a school that serves young adults with disabilities. And you'll hear from Tom how this information helped refine the proposal for line 19 into what's in today's ordinance. For the Green Line, people had concerns about additional transfers, particularly for trips to and from downtown Portland. There were also a number of lines that had fewer comments but very intense sentiment about geographic isolation and limited alternatives, concerns about having longer trips or not having all-day service. Overall, the three most common themes were about impacts to work and school trips, accessibility challenges and longer travel times, and general appreciation for TriMet and the opportunity to provide feedback. So from all these comments, the service planning team has refined the proposal to reflect some new information and ideas, while still having some very difficult choices. So that refined proposal was released 2 weeks ago, March 11. You had the public forum last week. And the next slide, we just have a recap of what was discussed in the public forum and in the first 60 or so emails that we reviewed. You've, of course, received many more in the meantime. There generally weren't any new themes. What was shared in emails to you since the final proposal was released and at last week's forum, were really people amplifying what we heard during January. There's appreciation for the modifications to the line 19 proposal. There's both appreciation and concern for the interconnected changes to line 17 and 70, and continued concern and some suggested alternatives for the changes to line 63 and 96. There's also a significant number of comments that reflect riders' understanding of the critical need for transit funding. So people really do see what a tough spot TriMet is in. So now we'll hear from Tom and Grant about the specifics of the plan.
Board President Lewis and TriMet board members, thank you for having me today. Again, my name is Tom Mills. I'm the Director of Mobility, Planning, and Policy here at TriMet. And as Jennifer mentioned, I'm going to walk us through actually about half of the plan, and then I'm going to ask Grant O'Connell, Manager of Service Planning, to walk us through the rest of it. As Jennifer mentioned earlier, in the fall, we had an outreach with the community where we suggested 9 different approaches to how we go about reducing service. And based on what we heard, we developed a proposal. But we took that proposal and we ran it through a matrix. And the first thing we looked at was, well, and frankly, we did this with all 9 of them. We said, well, okay, what is the cost savings that we think we could achieve? And of course, in this matrix, green is good, red is not so good, and medium, the yellow is in between. And so we saw some lines, some approaches that saved us a lot of money, and we thought, great. And then we looked at, well, how many people ride those lines? And we saw some that, whoa, a lot of people ride those lines, so we might save a lot, but we're going to impact a lot of people. But then we looked at the degree of impact, meaning, if you're eliminating a line has a much bigger impact than, say, reducing the frequency of a line. Again, we looked at the survey results, and then we weren't able to do it for everyone, but we did a job access analysis where we could actually estimate how many fewer jobs could one access if we were to make a change. What you see on this slide here is the proposal that we rolled out to the communities. So that includes the FY26 reductions that Jennifer mentioned, the trimmings, as we call them, a plan to, and we'll go through them one by one, but a plan to only operate the Green Line between Gateway Transit Center and Clackamas Town Center, some network changes to reduce redundancies or areas where maybe we can operate one line instead of two lines instead of three lines. A couple lines where we recommend eliminating due to low ridership, a couple lines where the midday ridership is quite low, but the trips to the high schools are quite high, so keep the high school trips, eliminate everything else. And then a couple later night frequencies, and where we wouldn't run the line all the way to the end on every trip, so-called short lines. So next we'll go through the individual changes themselves. If we can go to the next slide, please. So let me start with the Green Line, and I mentioned this just a second ago. So for all of these, we're going to show you a map. On the left is the current network, and on the right is what we are proposing. So in the current network, the Green Line operates from Clackamas Town Center to Gateway, along the Banfield, down the Portland Transit Mall to Portland State University. The proposal is to only have the Green Line operate between Clackamas Town Center and Gateway. Along the Banfield, we also have the Blue Line and the Red Line. If only the blue and red are operating, that still provides 7.5-minute service for folks. And then on the Transit Mall, we wouldn't have Green Line service, but we would still have 15-minute service with the orange, yellow line, and also plenty of bus service for people to be able to transit up and down the Transit Mall. I'd also like to really highlight that, as you see on this map, nearly every MAX station along the Green Line has bus service that goes to downtown Portland. And in many cases, those are frequent service bus lines that operate every 15 minutes all day, every day. And in many cases, it's probably faster to take the bus than to go all the way up to Gateway and then out the Banfield, especially if you're going to the southern part of downtown, like a place like Portland State University. We'll go to the next slide, please. As Jennifer mentioned, Line 19 was the line that we heard the most about. The original proposal was to eliminate service on Gleason, and the reason for that was because Gleason is only a quarter-mile walk from Burnside, where we operate frequent service on Line 20, and no more than a half-mile walk to the MAX stations, where the MAX stations line up near Gleason. We heard a lot of comments back, a lot of concern. We did hear about a community center for people with cognitive disabilities. We wanted to make sure we still serve that. Obviously, we were concerned about Providence Medical Center. So we came up with a new solution, and that's shown on the right. And what that does is it maintains Line 19 on Gleason. It would no longer go to Southeast Portland. It would connect with Line 58. The nice thing about Line 58 ends in downtown Portland, and the nice thing about it, it has the same frequency as the Line 19. They both run every half hour. So it's really about just connecting them. We don't have to add service to make it work. Now, of course, the Line 58 doesn't run as many hours as the Line 19, so we would have the Line 19 on Gleason only go to about as late as the 58 does. That's about 9:30 at night. And also on the weekends, we would only have the Line 19, and which now would be Line 19, 58. They would all be called the Line 19, and it would go all the way to Beaverton. On the weekends, we would only have it operate hourly. So that's how we would save money, but yet still be able to provide the core service along Gleason for people. We'll go to the next slide, please. There's a number of lines here, a few different proposals, but the main one, and I'll talk about all of them, but I want to start with the one you heard about earlier today, line 17 in Northeast Portland. Line 17 operates along 24th Avenue, 29th Avenue 24th Avenue in Irvington, 29th Avenue in Alameda, and 27th in Concordia. It runs about every half hour. These are very narrow residential streets. If two buses meet, one has to pull over and let the other one go by. Hopefully, there's no parking at that time. It is a difficult environment to operate in. Additionally, since the pandemic, we have seen the ridership on line 17 fall significantly. While the system-wide, our ridership is at about 70% of pre-pandemic levels. On this segment of line 17, it is only at about 35% of pre-pandemic levels. And that's not too surprising. This is an area, this is a very residential area that really the ridership was generated by the workday commute, and with more people working downtown, it just hasn't rebounded. So what we're recommending we do is we move the line 17. It wouldn't be eliminated, but we would move it over to Northeast 33rd Avenue. This would require a longer walk for many people. We'd certainly recognize that. But Northeast 33rd is a bigger arterial, serves Grant High School. We think we can get more riders on that. And then in doing so, we would pull back the line 70, which currently is on Northeast 33rd, to only operate to Rose Quarter Transit Center. That's really how we get savings out of this, is by not operating the line 70 all the way up to Sunderland. Additionally, though, we are concerned about service to the University of Oregon campus. So we would reroute line 8 so that it would run over to Deacom and the University of Oregon campus. Line 8 lays over on Deacom and Martin Luther King Jr. It's only over there because that's the best place we could find to lay the bus over. It doesn't have to be over there. So by moving it over to the University of Oregon, we can still serve that. And that is a frequent service line. Finally, I just want to mention with line 77, we would have that route along Broadway all the way to Martin Luther King Jr. and Grand Avenue, kind of picking up more of the line 17 there. We'll go to the next slide, please. Again, this is a couple different proposals in one. Let's start with line 15 and line 16. So line 15 is a frequent service line running from Gateway to Northwest Portland, all the way to Montgomery Park. And then beyond Montgomery Park, about every other trip continues on into the Northwest Industrial Area up to Yeon, St. Helens Road, and Kittredge. Additionally, in that area is line 16. It starts all the way up at Sauvie Island. It serves Linton and then St. John's, and then it goes into downtown Portland by way of Front Avenue. Unfortunately, that's a really difficult area to serve. It's an industrial area. Industrial areas are really hard to get ridership due to the varying shift times, the pedestrian environment, et cetera. So what we're recommending we do is no longer have line 16 go up to Sauvie Island, St. John's, Linton, but we would have line 15 serve it, but only in the peak hours. It really would be about getting the students to Lincoln High School from Linton, as well as about one trip in the morning for people from St. John's to get to downtown. Likewise, doing the same in the afternoon to get people home. We would also, based on what we heard from folks, we would also retain a couple trips on Front Avenue from that Kittredge-Yeon area to serve those apartments, again, just in the rush hour to get people home. We would no longer have weekend service on line 16, and we wouldn't have weekend service on St. Helens Road on line 15. So that's proposal number 1 here. Proposal number 2, line 44 serves St. John's and then goes up to Pier Park. Line 75, which is a frequent service line, also serves St. John's and goes to Pier Park. Because Line 75 is a frequent service line running every 15 minutes, we feel that it would be okay to bring back Line 44 and just have it end in St. John's and not go all the way to Pier Park. Next slide, please. Okay, we're going to return to Line 19. This is the southeast portion of Line 19. It comes from the transit mall. It crosses over on the Tilcomb crossing. It serves the Westmoreland area and then the Eastmoreland area to Woodstock and cuts down to Duke. And by going down to Duke, it goes by the school for students with cognitive disabilities that Jennifer had mentioned earlier, and then goes on to Mount Scott. Also, Line 10 is a line that runs 7 days a week, about every half hour, serving the kind of Gladstone area, Steele, and Herald. And what's interesting about Line 10 is it goes all the way to 136th Avenue, and because we don't have a place to lay over, it then doubles back and goes back to Lentz Town Center. So what we propose doing is actually, our original proposal was Line 19 would go away, and so what we would do is replace it with trips from the Line 4. Line 4 is a bus line that comes from Northeast Portland. It's a frequent service bus, and it lays over in downtown Portland. Now, we aren't recommending the Woodstock portion become frequent service. It would still be half-hour service. So what that would mean is every other Line 4 would continue to Southeast Portland, just the way the Line 19 does. However, we have it continue, when it gets to Woodstock, we have it go all the way out Woodstock to Lentz Town Center. We do this primarily because on Woodstock is zoned for higher density development, and we would be able to get more rides as as Woodstock builds up and there are more apartments and businesses along the street. Additionally, by only going to Lentz Town Center, we save some money because now we're not going all the way to Mount Scott. However, we do want to still serve Mount Scott, and we do still want to serve the Portland Public Schools Community Transitions Program on Duke. So what we're now recommending is Line 10 travel the way we originally recommended on Steele, no longer on Herald. It would take 52nd to Duke, go on Duke to 72nd, so then it would still be able to serve the school, and it would go all the way up Mount Scott. It would operate from about 7:30 in the morning to about 6:30 at night, weekdays only. We've been in touch with the school. They like this proposal, and they were very happy to hear that we were able to save it. Next slide, please. Okay, again, a couple proposals in one here, and it's getting a little messy, a little spaghetti on the slides here, I understand, but I'll walk you through it. And this one includes Line 96 and Line 38, both of which you heard about today. Let's start with Line 96. So Line 96 is a bus line that begins in Wilsonville. It operates as a local service line on Boones Ferry Road until it gets to the Tualatin Park and Ride. After the Tualatin Park and Ride, it gets on I-5, and it stays on I-5 until it gets downtown to downtown Portland. It is a great trip. There is no question about that. It is very fast. Frankly, I don't think you could travel that fast even on max for that distance throughout the system. It is very fast. And the people who ride it love it. And the ridership isn't horrible. I want to state that. There are definitely riders. But like Line 17, its rebound since the pandemic has been about half of what the rest of the network's rebound has been. And again, this is the likely culprit here is work from home. This was a commuter bus to downtown Portland. Fewer people are going to downtown Portland to work. At the same time, we were also noticing that in this corridor is another bus line, Line 37, both of which only runs during rush hour. And we had this idea of operating Line 96 on Boones Ferry Road. By doing so, it allows us to eliminate Line 37 because we could cover that with the Line 96 and save money. So the proposal here is for Line 96 to operate on Boones Ferry Road. The Line 37 would go away. The Line 96 would only operate in the morning rush hour and the afternoon rush hour. It would turn onto Kerr Parkway, going through Mountain Park, and go to Barber Transit Center. At Barber Transit Center is a park and ride that, frankly, right now is not very full. So for those who ride to the Tualatin Park and Ride, they could still ride 96, but maybe and do it relatively quickly. They could just drive to Barber Transit Center and pick up the Line 96 from there. And in order to kind of gain back some of that express service, we would have Line 96 only stop at 3 stops between Barber Transit Center and downtown Portland, kind of the 3 stops where we're most likely to get more riders. So that is our proposal for Line 96. Let me talk a little bit about Line 38. Line 38 also begins at the Tualatin Park and Ride along the industrial area in Tigard on 72nd Avenue. It goes through Cruz Way, big office environment, to Boones Ferry, and through Mountain Park, and then on Boones Ferry all the way into downtown. This is only a rush hour only line. It is, has some ridership, but it's not gangbusters, let's say. And so our thinking here is we could have Line 38 go to Barber Transit Center, and people would have the option to transfer either to the 96, again, you'd have that fast trip into downtown from Barber, or they could transfer to Line 12. By going through Mountain Park, we would be close to the 96, so some of those folks who ride 96, some of those folks who ride the 38 today could ride the 96. Additionally, we had proposed eliminating Line 97 to Tualatin and Sherwood. What we are now proposing is having that connect to the 38, and we would rename the whole line Line 97. So it would be a line that operates from Sherwood through Tualatin and then up to Cruz Way, Boones Ferry Road, Mountain Park, and then Barber Transit Center. Next slide, please. This is an easy one. Line 20 is a frequent service bus line, 15 minutes every day, all day, as is Line 76. Line 20 today goes to Beaverton Transit Center, as does Line 76. What we are proposing is having Line 20 not operate frequent service between Northwest Portland and Sunset. So rather than every 15 minutes, it would be every 30 minutes. So every other bus would continue to Sunset Transit Center. This is something we used to do about 8 years ago, and it was only about 8 years ago we ramped up the whole 20 to 15-minute service. And the reason that we're recommending going back to that is much of that area on Burnside, west of Northwest Portland, is in forests, and we're not really picking anyone up in those areas. But we still want to serve it. We still want to go to Providence, St. Vincent, and Sunset Transit Center. But we also want to make sure we're still serving Cedar Hills Boulevard with frequent service because we do get a lot of rides there. Cedar Hills Crossing is a big popular destination. So we would extend Line 76 up Cedar Hills to Sunset Transit Center. So with that, those are my slides for today. I'm going to hand it off to Grant O'Connell.
Next slide. We'll pick up in Southwest. In a similar area to where we were talking about Line 96. So I want to start by talking about Lines 45 and 39. Line 45 today starts in Tigard Transit Center, goes through a portion of Tigard that is in those areas. It does duplicate Lines 94 and 62 for a portion of that trip. But then it continues through Garden Home on up to Hillsdale and into downtown Portland. The proposal would be, because of that duplication in those areas of Tigard, we would have it start at Washington Square instead of Tigard TC. It would still proceed up through Garden Home on into Hillsdale, but where it normally would continue on to downtown, we would actually combine it with Line 39. It would proceed south from there in Hillsdale providing ridership, providing service along Terwilliger and Boone's Ferry at high school commute times. I want to note that particularly given some of the testimony this morning. It's maybe a bit of an oversight on our maps. We could have been more clear that the 38 will still have line 39 service on that stretch of Boone's Ferry by the new combined line 45 getting to Wells High School. So where the line 39 today comes in from Arnold Creek, it would then just flow through on into Garden Home via line 45. We would operate at high school commute times. I would note in Hillsdale, there is every 15-minute service by line 54 going on into downtown Portland, available as a transfer for those wanting to reach Washington Square Mall, or also by the combination of lines 56 and 43, every 15-minute service on up to OHSU. Next slide, please. I want to talk about in Tualatin and West Lynn. So this starts with the extension that we did only just a few years ago to operate service from extending from Meridian Park Hospital in Tualatin across via Borland Road, Stafford, and I-205 through West Lynn to Oregon City. We do every fourth bus because line 76 is a frequent service line, so once an hour over to Oregon City. That's a tough area. We're serving, very rural areas, and it's very low ridership, though it is an important connection that we understand our partners at SMART may be looking to launch service to in a similar area. So we would pull line 76 back to not operate that hourly extension to Oregon City. Then also illustrated on this map is line 153. It operates again from Oregon City, but through Willamette area of West Lynn on up Stafford and Rosemont and McVeigh on into Lake Oswego. That line does see very low ridership, so it is proposed for elimination. Next slide, please. This is some spaghetti, so we'll talk about Milwaukee and Happy Valley. I want to first start with line 156. It operates from Clackamas Town Center, heading east past the Kaiser Sunnyside Hospital and through Sunnybrook, Mather, past the high school and via 212 over to 152nd and into ending near the Happy Valley Library. We had an opportunity noting that Mather Road gets within about a half mile of Sunnyside, so we had an opportunity to stream that route a bit and continue on Summers Lane rather than doing the sort of stair-stepping pattern through Mather. Shifting sort of west of Clackamas Town Center, we have lines 29 and 152. Both serve different areas between Milwaukee and Clackamas Town Center. We're looking to combine those by serving the industrial area, Milwaukee industrial area along International Way with a streamlined version of line 29. And then we also, as it gets to the outer stretches there, note that it operates on Webster, Roots, and Johnson, and there are other services nearby, so we'd have that line take a more direct route via Lake and Cascade Highway on into Clackamas Town Center. Noting that the line 31 already serves Webster, but then also finally with one small change to line 30 coming from Estacada. It today operates on a freeway like line 96 and therefore not making any stops. If we pull it just a few blocks away over to Southeast Johnson for line 30, we can cover a portion of the former line 29. Next slide, please. This covers lines 34 and 40. For line 34 in the northern portion, where it comes in from Oregon City to Milwaukee and through the Milwaukee, northern Milwaukee industrial area. It touches the Tacoma Max station and then turns east through unincorporated Clackamas County out along Linwood and Harmony to Clackamas Town Center. Well, in consideration of the other changes we're looking at with the green line, we note that two routes there touch each other, lines 34 and 40. we could then give the Linwood portion over of line 34 to line 40. And by doing so, we've created a one-seat connection from yet another MAX station along the Green Line, Clackamas Town Center, via line 40, through Selwood, past PSU, and on into downtown Portland. We'll talk more about line 34 in an upcoming slide. Next slide. So moving south along line 34, as we move south out of Milwaukee, that route goes on River Road all the way through to Gladstone and Oregon City and on up to Clackamas Heights along Holcomb. An interesting thing we note in that unincorporated section of Oak Grove and southern Clackamas County is that River and Oatfield, both in inverse ways, become increasingly close to McLaughlin, where we have a frequent service line, line 33. So by taking line 33 and taking a left turn at Oak Grove, we can cross over McLaughlin, create a transfer to line 33, and then cover the portions of Oatfield that become increasingly far away from McLaughlin, essentially doing what our writer said in the survey, trying to look for places where you can try to serve as much of the same area with fewer lines as possible. Then finally, we'd take a look at line 79. Line 79 is on its way to seeing better ridership, and we want to give it some of the best portions of the areas that it serves. And we also find transfer opportunities where lines cross to create new network opportunities. So we do want to essentially cross lines 34 and 79 and have line 79 cover a portion of Gladstone via Arlington, and then send line 34 over to cover the former portions of line 79 and along Washington on into Oregon City Transit Center. Next slide, please. So now I've moved south of Oregon City Transit Center, starting with line 33 here. Line 33 takes a somewhat circuitous path between Oregon City Transit Center and Clackamas Community College. We want to streamline that a bit. We want to put that investment in frequent service on routes where we know there's the most land use, intense land use, and therefore likely the best ridership. So we're streamlining line 79 to move it to 7th and Molalla, and then continue on out to Clackamas Community College. But then that leaves a portion that we want to cover with a different line. So we're proposing to extend line 31 to replace portions of the reconfigured line 33 and also portions of line 32 that would be eliminated along Lynn and then Beaver Creek Road. Next slide, please. Finally, some lines where we see lower ridership in the evening hour. Line 33, the section that's dashed there between Milwaukee and Clackamas Town Center along King Road. After 8 p.m., we are proposing to reduce that to every 60 minutes. And then line 72, the portion between Cully and Swan Island along Killingsworth. After 8 p.m., we would be offering service around every 30 to 40 minutes, and then after 10 p.m., it would be down to every 60 minutes, noting that this is the line being studied for 82nd Avenue, and so 82nd Avenue FX service is not affected by this proposal in terms of where that service would be duplicative with a future FX line. Next slide, please. So these are bus lines that see good ridership for commute hours for getting students to high school, and we are proposing to reduce them to just that. So line 51 currently goes from Goose Hollow on up to Council Crest, as well as to Sunset on over to Wells. It has a branching pattern there. We would reduce that to operate just at those times to serve both Lincoln and Wells High School. Line 63, we also see best ridership on that line at commute hours for high school, and we would reduce it to that, though to honor the memorandum of understanding that we have with Washington Park, where we have said we would give them 18 months' notice. We would defer action on implementing that change until next fiscal year. I would also note we would reduce that route to not operate the downtown portion, so it would be just Arlington Heights on into Lincoln High School and terminate there. We do note that is an area of civic concern around Washington Park, and so we will continue to have conversations with all of our partners in the area about the best path forward for getting service, noting that there is a Washington Park shuttle and a MAX station, but also potential alternative solutions that could be conceived of there. Next slide, please. Some further line eliminations due to low ridership. Line 82 operating in South Gresham from Powell and 182nd rather, on up Hindley and Eastman Parkway, and then through Gresham City Hall Station, and then out Powell Valley Road, that portion of which runs on top of other services. So both being low ridership and responding to rider requests to consider where services are duplicative. Then line 153, I mentioned that on a slide earlier, but in West Lynn, connecting Lake Oswego via Stafford, Rosemont, and Salamo Roads, that service is very low ridership and proposed for elimination, though we do note that our partners in SMART are considering serving Willamette area of West Lynn. Finally, what does this mean for our lift boundary? Next slide, please. I will say, you know, we are proud of, by looking at where routes are duplicative, such as the green line running on top of the red and blue, by looking at that, we are able to limit the amount of eliminations we are doing because we are looking for where things are duplicative. And so I'm proud to say that by doing this 5% cut, we are still geographically covering most of our district that we cover today with lift service. But there is some reductions related to lines 153 and 76 as well as 82, as highlighted in the hatched area where lift service would retract due to the contraction of our fixed route service. But we have done analysis on that, and it shows that only approximately 0.3 of all of our lift trips would be impacted related to those lines. And those are the slides we have prepared for you.
Thank you, Grant, Tom, and Jennifer. Turn it over to General Manager or...
Wanted to know if the board wanted to have
Okay.
questions now before I bring John Gardner and Jake Ware up to talk about Title VI and a draft Title VI assessment.
Okay. I see Director Kim has a few words.
Yeah, thank you so much for this heavy lift, and thank you also in advance as we look to next year as well. Procedural question for General Counsel Shelley Devine. If there were to be any changes to the Exhibit A or B to this ordinance before the second reading, would that second reading be considered the first reading then?
Correct.
Okay.
There's a Oregon Supreme Court case, Drummond, it's a tax court case, that ruled that, yes, you have to have a first reading and no substantive changes, and then a second reading in order to adopt an ordinance.
Noted. Thank you.
Okay. Director Graham.
Thank you. So as we have been hearing public testimony in these last month, let's say, there has been a lot that we've received on the Line 96, both in the board forum and written letters submitted to this meeting and more testimony today. And I'm hoping that you could explain more about sort of your analysis and how you've landed on the recommendation that you have specifically for that line, and whether, based on any of this feedback, you would relook at that, or you feel like you've made the decision, the best decision that you can.
Thank you, Director Graham, for that question. Very good question. for fear of repeating myself too much, there were a couple things that we considered when making that recommendation. First of which, this idea of, are we able to serve the same corridor with fewer lines? When Line 96 is on the freeway, it's great for those who are able to access it, but in truth, it's bypassing a whole market of potential customers for us. And so for us to look at that and see that, oh, well, we have another line on Boone's Ferry Road that, maybe we don't need both of these lines. We can serve both the Wilsonville market, the Wilsonville to Walton market, and that Boone's Ferry market together with one line. That is one large consideration we had. The other consideration, and I know for those who've been on the board for the last few years have been hearing this conversation about Line 96. The current ridership on Line 96 hasn't rebounded the way the rest of the network has. As I mentioned, Line 96 is a great trip. I don't doubt that, and everything everyone says about it is 100% accurate. But for such a great trip, it should be more full. And that doesn't mean to say there aren't some trips that are relatively full, but for such a great trip, we should be doing better. And again, I go back to the current condition in downtown with people, maybe they're working downtown, but maybe 2 days a week, maybe 3 days a week. We need riders every single day. And so those items really are what led us to that recommendation. And then lastly, I would say, and because I certainly sympathize with a lot of people, and this is a hard call, but there is still the option of driving to the Barber Transit Center, recognizing not every single person can drive. But for most of those riders, particularly those who drive to the Tualatin Park and Ride today, there is still the option of driving to the Barber Transit Center, parking there, and then getting into downtown pretty quickly. It might be slightly longer, but it wouldn't be as long as riding the whole line.
I'd like to just jump in very briefly. 2 points. I want to just say nothing different, but in my own words of the 96, because I am sympathetic and understand that presents challenges for folks. But I want to think about the framing that we had from the budget conversations earlier, and even the points that Director Flowers made about the budget challenges possibly being even worse. We look at that, I say I want to be the transit Santa, not the transit Grinch. Well, looking at our precious resources that we have, when we put it on the freeway, we are artificially limiting its utility. And so that is a tough pill to swallow, knowing that this represents a 5% cut, and we're going to have to come back with 5% more next year. And if the changes that Director Flowers are pointing to, we may have to go even further. And so it all, in my mind, points back to, I want to use the precious resources that is the service that we have to the best of our ability. And by artificially limiting its utility, it just doesn't sit right, I guess, knowing that comes at an impact to some people. So that's my take on it. But I do want to also, I was passed a comment, want to follow up on Director Kim's question around possible changes to the ordinance. In addition to the legal implications, there's also, we have a certain number of hoops that we have to jump through to implement this change. And we've come to the conclusion that the best time to make these changes is August 23rd for two big reasons. One is we have a great role to play in getting kids to school. And there's a lot of these changes that will help support the relocation of Cleveland High School over to the Marshall campus. But for two, if we get all of these changes implemented at August, it sort of provides clarity when we're doing outreach next fall around the subsequent round of changes, that there's not lingering cuts from last year. We can have a clear conversation. Anyway, all that to say, hitting an August 23rd deadline for a 5% cut is going to be a challenge for us operationally as an agency. And so if we delay that decision that puts, it has an impact on our ability to meet that August 23rd deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Grant. Those wise words for memory. Director Frisbee.
Thank you, President Lewis. And first, I just want to start with a big thank you to Jennifer and Tom and Grant. I hope that for folks listening, the depth of detail and knowledge of the impacts of these cuts and the awareness that this team just demonstrated helps drive home how seriously we are taking this and how much thought and energy has gone into minimizing the impact of these cuts as much as possible. Having said that, the impact is not minimal. And we all know that this is life-changing and not in a good way for many people. And so I think, you'll hear that consistently from the board, from the executive team today. None of us want to be here. Grant, I do like your Transit Santa line. None of us want to be here, but it is the thing that we have to do at this moment. And I have a couple of somewhat disjointed thoughts, so I'm just going to get them out there quickly. But I did want to start with a thank you to the team you just heard from and everyone who participated. The other piece that I wanted to comment in and sort of goes off of Jennifer's statements and Grant, what you just said, which is none of these cuts will not impact someone. They will all have an impact. And I think one of the things that we have worked hard as a board to do is to make sure, our job is to make sure that people have a chance to offer feedback, but that feedback is taken in at the staff level and is coordinated with data. And that the feedback really helps expand our understanding of the impact of these cuts and expand our understanding of the data that we have. But it is really important. I think we heard last public comment, we heard a couple of folks highlight the fact that they appreciated this data-driven approach. And I want to make sure that we continue this work and this approach. And I think I've heard that consistently over and over from everyone. And I just want to say thank you to the team for doing that. My second message is also sort of for the public, and it's a little bit of a downer. But I want us to remember there's this round of cuts now. And if we do not have a different revenue reality in a year, the next round of cuts are much, much worse. And that drives home the need for us to try to come up with a solution to figure out a different way to do this work. But if we are balancing our budget on the revenue world that we have right now, it is really awful. And I think that's important for all of us to know, that's important for the public to hear, that's important for policymakers and decision makers to hear. So I just want to be another voice adding to that line. And then, follow my last piece, as Jennifer, I'm sure your team has already been doing this, and I'm hoping that we can see it carried forward as we continue to have these conversations, that we are making sure that people are as educated as possible about these cuts. There are always going to be folks who show up the day the cuts happen and are shocked, and we want to do everything we can to have that be a very small number of people. I appreciate all the work we have done in getting this information out and in enlisting people's feedback and thoughts. I got a postcard. It's been on basically every reader board on the FX2 when I take the bus. It's on the signs at the other bus stops when I take the 14 and the 15. It's at the Max stop signs when I'm downtown. So appreciate that. And I know we're going to have to do everything we can to get this news out so that folks can come up with other alternatives and figure out what their next plan of attack is for getting around our region as things change. Thank you again to the team. And it's a sad moment that we're here, but thank you.
Okay. Is that it? Oh, okay. Thank you. And before we go to John Garner and his team, I it is a sad moment, and I echo my board members and some of their words, their comments, but the thank you. But I've been on this board for a number of years, and the work that the board is doing is very, very hard. No board member comes on to a board knowing knowing that they will have to make a dramatic change in an organization this size. I don't think any of us knew ahead of time. But I do know, as a longtime accountant, the numbers that we see just did not happen last year. Where we're going did not happen a couple of years ago. It has been a moving train of how we manage our organization. And so it's commendable to the operator, to the men and women that sweep and clean the trains, to all of us, that we are aware and are doing our best. I don't think there's anyone that is not touched by the financial transformation that's going to happen in this organization. We are not alone. We're not sitting in a silo, but across the United States, all of our transit agencies are sitting in the same place with the same boards, asking the same questions. And it's really appreciative for Tyler, Director Frisbee, to point out that we have the data to look at and make decisions that we have to make. They're going to be hard decisions. And hopefully we find the best path possible to get to where we need to this time next year. I depend on the board depends on all of us, and we all depend on everyone in this room and not in this room. I come from a blue family, and now I have a transit family, and we're in this together. And we can do this. I'm not going to throw ODOT under the bus, but we're going to see our way through this, and we're going to do it as a team. No one gets to leave. We're here. Okay. On that note, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, President and Board. Really appreciate your comments as we move forward. Challenging times for us, and as you stated, President, we will work together and get through it. It takes a village to be able to do that, and we will do that. Thank you, guys. Jennifer, Tom, Grant, thank you so much. We'll bring up John Gardner and Jake Ware. President, I didn't know if you wanted to take just a quick 5-minute bathroom rest. Okay. Okay.
I will be short. Good morning, Dr. Lewis, President Lewis, and members of the board. Excited to provide a Title VI overview of what the service analysis mean. Just as you know, this is only possible through the really amazing effort by public affairs and best-of-class public outreach. 13,000 responses is a ton, and it informs sort of the recommendations that we have in the analysis that Jake Ware does. In your packet, there's a 25-page in-depth analysis, and Jake's going to be at the high level just kind of walking through the findings to make sure that although we're all disappointed with the service reductions, that we've done our due diligence to make sure they don't disproportionately affect low-income and riders of colors. So with that, I'll hand it over to Jake Ware.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, President Lewis, members of the board. I thought I was going to get to walk through every single line like we just did, but okay, I guess I'll be a little more concise. So I want to just kind of give you this high-level summary of the Title VI analysis. Before I do, I want to be clear that, you know, as we're talking about, these cuts will disproportionately impact our lower income and riders of color. We know that. So this analysis is meant to say, it's meant to look at how we can limit that disproportionality as much as possible, because we know it's going to be painful. But if we can go to the next slide. So as a quick review, what our overall structure of analysis is we look at what qualifies as a major service change. We have a threshold for that. We look at the potential impacts on minority and low-income populations and compare those to impacts on non-minority, non-low-income populations. If we find those disproportionalities, we look at ways that we can minimize, mitigate, or in some cases avoid those. So just as a quick review of what this overall picture is. Next slide. So in the service plan that you just were taken through, 34 lines in total have proposed service changes. 21 of those meet our major service change threshold due to reduction in route miles, frequency, span. 15 actually meet that threshold because technically there's an increase in route miles, which seems counterintuitive because service is not increasing. But if we go to the next slide, I'll give you an example just to make this really clear. So that change to the 76 and the 20, where the 20 will be pulled back to Sunset Transit Center and the 76 will extend up to Sunset Transit Center. If you go to the next slide, technically we have both a decrease on the line 20 and an increase on the line 76. And so we evaluate both of those for potential disproportionalities on our Title VI populations. Next slide, please. So the results, we did not find a disparate impact, which is the analysis looking at impacts on minority populations, at either the individual line level, where we look at every single line and the populations that live along them, or at the system level, where we combine all of the major service changes and look at the population impacted there and compare it to our overall TriMet district. As far as the impacts on low-income populations, that's the disproportionate burden term. We did not find disproportionate burden at that system level where we combine all of the major service changes together, but we did find changes to 3 lines specifically, the 10, 16, and 82. They do meet the criteria for disproportionate burden. So in the full report, it talks about the ways that we are trying to and have tried to minimize or mitigate some of those impacts, but just listed here, do want to point out that all affected stops do have very low ridership. After engaging the community, as you heard, our planners made some changes on the lines 10 and 16 to try to lessen those impacts. And then the line 82, which is proposed for elimination, it just doesn't meet our standard for ridership because it only has 5 boardings per vehicle hour. Our lowest service standard is 8. So the next slide just summarizes all of this in one table that I hope is legible. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. And thank you for your time.
Board members, any questions? Anyone online? Nope, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The way of my food here. We will not be voting on ordinance 382 until its second reading, which will take place at our board meeting on April 22nd. However, at this time, do members of the board have any additional questions, comments about ordinance 382? Okay. Just as I've done, print out the actual ordinance. It's very good to tuck under your pillow to just absorb the massive amount of changes that we are going to be voting on. The first reading of ordinance 382 was our last formal piece of business today before we adjourn. I would like to remind the board of our April 22nd board meeting. the TSCC will be holding its meeting in person here in our boardroom, and all board members are expected to attend. The meeting will start at 8 o'clock. It will also push back a little bit of our regular board meeting by 30 minutes or so for that. And then I have two actual announcements. For Director Frisbee and Director Kim and myself, we do have our F&A meeting on Thursday. So if we have any continuing, excuse me, questions, comments with Nancy and her team, that'll be Thursday at 3 o'clock. One of the things we've done as a board is we usually have had our F&A right before the board meeting in a short time, and we've moved it to a separate meeting so that we can stay focused on our financial landscape. The other thing to remind the board is that we have changed our financial statements that we see to actually reflect some of the changes. So make sure for the board to review those. Lastly, I'd like to point out our board retreat is coming up in May, and so Director Kim and I are reaching out to board members for agenda topics at this time to get them to us, especially on our changes, the different directions that TriMet is going, for your feedback for agenda items, and that's for our May retreat. Please get those, your comments, or even new agenda items. Your thoughts are needed for our May retreat. On that note, that concludes, did I miss any other announcements? Okay, that concludes our formal full-day business for today. Our regular meeting will be Wednesday, April 22nd, here in our boardroom with TSCC here at 8 o'clock. Meeting's adjourned.